Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Illusion. Dominic Veritas knew three things for certain. His construction company was thriving, his Scotch collection was unmatched in Portland, and his marriage of 8 years was rock solid. At 42, he had built everything from nothing. The mansion in West Hills, the fleet of luxury cars, and a reputation that commanded respect throughout Oregon's business community. The December air hung cold as Dom pulled his Audi into the driveway. Snow was forecast for the weekend, perfect for their annual Christmas tree decorating tradition. His 6-year-old son Liam would be bouncing off the walls, probably already pestering Audrey about when they could start hanging ornaments. Dom checked his watch, 7:30 p.m. He was early for once. The last 5 months had been a marathon of 18-hour days, finalizing the riverfront development project that would cement his legacy. His absence at home hadn't gone unnoticed, but Audrey had been understanding. Too understanding, perhaps. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and pine. Their 14-foot Fraser fir dominated the living room. Still naked save for the pre-strung lights Audrey had wrapped around it that afternoon. "Daddy!" Liam crashed into Dom's legs, small arms wrapping around his knees. "You're home. Mom said you wouldn't be back until bedtime." Dom ruffled his son's copper hair, so like Audrey's. "Surprise, buddy. Couldn't miss tree night, could I?" Audrey appeared in the doorway to the kitchen, wine glass in hand. For a split second, Dom caught something flicker across her face. Surprise? Disappointment, before it morphed into a smile. "You're early," she said, crossing the room to kiss his cheek. "I was just about to feed Liam dinner. I'll take over. Why don't you relax? You've been with a monster all day." Dom winked at his son, who giggled in response. Later, after dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and stories, Dom tucked Liam in a bed. The boy's eyelids drooped, but he fought sleep with the determination only a 6-year-old could muster. "Dad, are you going to be gone again tomorrow?" Dom felt a familiar stab of guilt. "Not tomorrow, buddy. Tomorrow's Saturday. We're going to decorate the tree, remember?" "Good." Liam yawned. "Mom cries when you're not here." Dom froze. "She does. At night. I hear her on the phone sometimes." Dom kept his voice casual. "On the phone? With who?" "Dunno." Liam's eyes finally closed. "She calls him V." Dom sat motionless beside his son's bed long after the boy's breathing had steadied into sleep. He tried to rationalize. V could be anyone. Vivian, her friend from spin class. Or Victor, her brother in Seattle. But brothers didn't make wives cry at night, and friends didn't necessitate whispered phone calls after dark. When he finally descended the stairs, Audrey was curled on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, smiling. "Is he asleep?" Out like a light, Dom poured himself 3 fingers of scotch. "So how was your day?" "The usual. Took Liam to school, had coffee with Taylor, picked up groceries." She set her phone down. "Oh, and I invited my parents for Christmas dinner. I hope that's okay." The casual way she mentioned Taylor, her maid of honor and supposed best friend, made Dom's suspicions seem absurd. Taylor was happily married to a pediatric surgeon named Richard. They'd had dinner together just last month. "Of course. Your dad's still drinking my bourbon." Audrey laughed. "You know it." They fell into easy conversation, and Dom allowed himself to relax. The comment about V was probably nothing, a child's misunderstanding or imagination. Later that night, Dom woke to an empty bed. The clock read 2:17 a.m. He found Audrey in the kitchen, her back to the door, phone pressed her ear. "Tomorrow. He'll be with Liam all day." "Yes, I miss you too." Her voice was a whisper, but in the silent house, it carried. "Soon, V. I promise." Dom retreated silently up the stairs, his mind racing. He didn't confront her. Not yet. Dominic Veritas didn't act on impulse or emotion. He gathered facts, planned meticulously, and struck decisively. Someone was about to learn why his rivals feared him. And if that someone was his own wife, so be it. Chapter 2. The Frayed Edges. The morning broke with pristine sunshine reflecting off fresh snow. A perfect Saturday for family traditions. Dom had slept little, his mind calculating possibilities and strategies. By dawn, he had formulated the beginnings of a plan. "Daddy, it's tree day." Liam bounced on their bed at 7 a.m. sharp, oblivious to the tension that had settled in his father's shoulders. Audrey groaned and pulled a pillow over her head. "Liam, indoor voice, please." Dom scooped up his son. "Let's let Mom sleep in. How about you help me make breakfast?" In the kitchen, Dom made chocolate chip pancakes while discreetly examining Audrey's phone, which she'd left charging on the counter. Nothing suspicious in her text messages or call log. Whoever V was, she was being careful. "Can we wake Mom now?" Liam asked, syrup coating his chin. "Sure, buddy. Go get her." While Liam thundered up the stairs, Dom logged into their family cell account on his laptop. The previous night's call had been to a number with no contact name, and it appeared regularly in her log for the past 4 months. Always late at night. Always for 20 minutes or more. He memorized the number just as Audrey appeared, tousled and yawning, with Liam dragging her by the hand. Pancakes. What's the occasion?" She kissed the top of Liam's head. "Tree day," Liam exclaimed, as if it were obvious. Breakfast passed with forced normalcy as Dom played the role of attentive husband while his mind processed the betrayal. For months of late-night calls while he worked himself to exhaustion providing for them. After breakfast, they moved to the living room to begin decorating. The massive tree dominated the space, its branches still bare except for the pre-strung lights Audrey had wrapped around it the previous day. "I think the lights need to be plugged in first to make sure they all work," Dom suggested, looking for the cord. Audrey handed him a string of lights from a box. "Plug these in, hon." What happened next would forever be etched in Dom's memory. Liam lunged forward, panic in his eyes, and yanked the plug from Dom's hand. "No, Daddy, the wires are cut. Look." His small finger pointed to frayed copper near the plug. Mommy was scraping them with a knife in the kitchen. She told Grandma this will be his last Christmas. "She's watching you, Dad. Don't touch it." The room froze. Audrey's face drained of color, her eyes darting between Liam and Dom. "Liam." Audrey's voice was sharp. "What are you talking about?" "I was fixing the lights, not." "Don't lie, Mom. I saw you. With a knife." Dom maintained perfect composure, even as ice flooded his veins. He knelt to Liam's level. "Buddy, I need you to be very specific. When did you see Mom with these lights?" "Yesterday, when you were at work. She was in the kitchen with the knife and the lights." His lower lip trembled. "She was on the phone with Grandma, saying it would be your last Christmas." Dom's eyes met Audrey's. Her face had shifted from shock to something calculating. "Liam has such an imagination," she said with a nervous laugh. "I was trimming the frayed ends with scissors, not a knife. And I was telling Mom this would be our last Christmas in this house if your development goes through. Remember? We talked about moving closer to downtown." It was a plausible explanation. Too plausible, too quick. Dom examined the plug. The copper wires were indeed exposed, with clean, deliberate cuts that would have created a dangerous short circuit when plugged in. This wasn't wear and tear. This was intentional. "Liam, go to your room for a bit. I need to talk to Mom." "But the tree. We'll finish it soon. I promise." Once Liam was upstairs, Dom faced his wife. "Explain." Audrey's hands fluttered nervously. "Dom, you can't possibly think. These lights are old. The wiring frays. I was trying to fix them. With a kitchen knife? Instead of simply buying new ones? We're not exactly struggling financially, Audrey. You're overreacting. It's a misunderstanding." Dom held her gaze without blinking. "Who's V?" Her composure cracked briefly before she recovered. "V? I don't know what you're talking about. The person you call at night when you think I'm asleep. The person you were speaking to at 2 a.m. last night." Audrey's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're spying on me now? Answer the question." "It's Victoria, my therapist." "Therapists don't take calls at 2 a.m., Audrey." "Try again." She folded her arms. "I don't have to explain my friendships to you. You've been absent for months, Dom. Did it ever occur to you that I might need someone to talk to?" The deflection was textbook. Dom recognized it from countless business negotiations when cornered attack. He decided to retreat strategically. "We're done decorating for today. I'm taking Liam to the Children's Museum." Dom, and I'm throwing these lights away. He gathered the damaged string. Unless you'd prefer I send them to a lab for analysis? Fear flickered across her features. Don't be ridiculous. As Dom climbed the stairs to get Liam, his mind was already several moves ahead. Audrey was planning something with this mysterious V, something that potentially involved Dom's death. The frayed wires were either a botched attempt or a warning shot. Either way, the game had begun, and Dominic Veritas never lost. Chapter 3: The Invisible Threads. The Children's Museum buzzed with weekend activity, providing the perfect cover for Dom's first counter-move. While Liam explored the dinosaur exhibit, Dom made 2 calls from a burner phone purchased at a gas station on the way. The first was to Tobias Wolf, his head of security at Veritas Construction. Ex-military and pathologically loyal, Tobias had handled delicate situations for Dom in the past. I need surveillance on my wife. Discreet, continuous, starting today. And I need a trace on this number. Dom recited the mysterious phone number from memory. Consider it done. Tobias replied without questions. Timeline: indefinite. And Tobias? This stays between us. The second call was to his attorney, Nora Blackwell. Nora, I need you to draft separation papers and secure my assets. Freeze joint accounts except for the household expense account. He lowered his voice as Liam waved from inside a mock dinosaur dig. And I need records of my life insurance policies. Dom, what's happening? Nora's concern was evident. Insurance. In every sense of the word. By evening, when they returned home, Dom had compartmentalized his rage and suspicion beneath a veneer of normalcy. He had always excelled at strategic patience. Audrey had decorated the tree in their absence. A peace offering, perhaps, or simply maintaining appearances. She'd ordered Liam's favorite pizza and was overly attentive throughout dinner. I'm sorry about this morning, she said after Liam had gone to bed. I've been stressed with the holidays coming. Let me make it up to you. Her hand slid suggestively along his thigh. Dom recognized the manipulation, but played along. Physical intimacy might lower her guard, reveal something useful. Afterward, he pretended to sleep while Audrey slipped out of bed around midnight, taking her phone. The next morning, Sunday, Tobias sent his first report. The phone number belonged to Victor Harlow, 39, an art dealer who had opened a gallery in Portland's Pearl District 6 months ago. He lived in a luxury apartment 3 blocks from Audrey's favorite coffee shop. A quick social media search revealed Victor Harlow was devastatingly handsome, cultured, and, most tellingly, had been photographed at the charity gala Dom had skipped in October due to work commitments. In the background of one photo, Dom spotted Audrey in her red Valentino dress, looking in Harlow's direction. The pieces were falling into place. Monday morning, Dom left for work as usual, but detoured to meet Tobias in person. She visited him yesterday, Tobias reported, sliding an envelope across the table. While you were at the museum with your son. They appear intimate. The photos inside confirmed what Dom already knew. Audrey in Harlow's arms, their kiss passionate and familiar, the embrace of established lovers, not a new infatuation. There's more, Tobias continued. Harlow has a record. Nothing major, fraud charges that were dropped in California 3 years ago. But he's burned through 3 wealthy women in the last 5 years. Moves to their city, establishes himself, begins a relationship, then somehow ends up with substantial assets before disappearing. A con man, Dom said flatly. A sophisticated one. His gallery is legitimate but struggling. His apartment is rented under a corporate name, and he's carrying significant debt. Dom absorbed this information with cold calculation. And my life insurance? $3 million, plus the business valuation of roughly $20 million. Your wife is the sole beneficiary. The picture was now crystal clear. Audrey and her lover weren't just having an affair. They were planning to kill Dom for his money. The Christmas lights had been the first attempt, likely botched by Liam's unexpected presence in the kitchen. Keep watching them, Dom instructed. I want to know everything. Where they meet, what they discuss, every move they make. What's your play here, boss? Tobias asked. Law enforcement? Dom's smile was devoid of warmth. No, this requires a more permanent solution. That evening, While reviewing architectural plans in his home office, Dom received a text from the surveillance team. Audrey had just entered Harlow's building. As if on cue, his phone rang. Audrey. Hey babe, I'm gonna be late. Taylor's having a crisis with Richard. Girl, emergency. The lie flowed effortlessly from her lips. Dom marveled at her composure. Take your time, he replied smoothly. Liam and I will manage dinner. After hanging up, Dom turned to find Liam standing in the doorway of his office, small face troubled. Dad? Is Mom okay? Dom gestured for his son to come closer. Why do you ask, buddy? She's been acting weird, like she's scared of something. Dom considered his words carefully. Your mom has some things she's working through. But I need you to tell me something important, Liam. That day with the Christmas lights, did Mom really say last Christmas to Grandma? Liam nodded solemnly. She said, if everything goes according to plan, this will be his last Christmas. I thought she meant Santa was going to die. The innocent interpretation almost made Dom smile. Almost. And have you seen Mom doing anything else unusual? Meeting with people I don't know. Liam's eyes widened. The man with the funny accent. He came to the house once when you were away. Do you remember his name? No, but Mom called him her special friend and said I couldn't tell you about him. Dom ruffled his son's hair, concealing his fury. Thank you for being honest with me, Liam. That's what brave boys do. After putting Liam to bed, Dom sat alone in his darkened office, the skeletal Christmas tree visible through the doorway. Its lights, new, safe ones he'd purchased, twinkled mockingly. His phone buzzed with another update from Tobias. She's left his apartment. Headed home. Approximately 20 minutes. Dom poured himself 2 fingers of scotch and contemplated the chessboard his life had become. Audrey and Harlow thought they were the players, but they'd fatally misunderstood who they were dealing with. In the construction business, Dom had faced down corrupt officials, violent union bosses, and ruthless competitors. He hadn't built his empire by surrendering when threatened. He'd done it by eliminating threats so thoroughly that no one dared cross him again. Audrey and her lover had made their opening move with those frayed Christmas lights. Now was Dom's turn, and Dominic Veritas played to win. Chapter 4. The Elaborate Trap. For the next 2 weeks, Dom executed the first phase of his strategy, surveillance and intelligence gathering. He became the perfect husband, attentive, loving, completely unsuspecting. He worked regular hours, brought home flowers, and even suggested a romantic weekend getaway after Christmas. Meanwhile, Tobias's team documented every meeting between Audrey and Victor Harlow. They placed discreet listening devices in Harlow's apartment and gallery, capturing conversations that turned Dom's blood to ice. We need to try again, Harlow had told Audrey during one meeting. The lights were too obvious. Something untraceable this time. His food, Audrey had suggested. He takes supplements every morning. I could gradually increase the dosage. They were discussing poison, a slower, more methodical approach than electrocution. Dom adjusted his schedule, pretending to take his supplements while actually disposing of them. He began subtly documenting his symptoms, mentioned headaches to colleagues, canceled a lunch due to stomach issues, even stumbled slightly when walking with Audrey one evening. The performance had the desired effect. The surveillance team reported Audrey's excited call to Harlow. It's working. He's showing symptoms. On December 23rd, Dom initiated Phase 2 division. He called Audrey's parents and, with carefully crafted concern, mentioned her emotional difficulties and concerning behavior. He described finding prescription bottles she'd hidden, suggested she might be struggling with the holiday season. She's been so distant, he told her mother with believable worry. I'm concerned about her stability around Liam. The seeds of doubt successfully planted. Dom then approached Liam's school counselor with similar concerns, creating a paper trail that would later prove invaluable. That evening, he suggested they host a Christmas Eve dinner the following night. Nothing fancy, just your parents, my sister, maybe a couple of friends. He watched Audrey's reaction closely. Tomorrow? That's so last minute, Dom. Her protest was immediate. I thought it would be nice. Family tradition and all that. He shrugged casually. I'll handle everything if you're too busy. Audrey hesitated, visibly calculating. Let me check if my parents are available. Great. and I was thinking of inviting someone from work, Tobias and his wife. You've met them at company events. Dom kept his tone light. Oh, and why don't you invite your friend from the gallery? The one who helped you pick out that painting for the dining room. Her face paled. What friend? The art dealer. Victor something? You mentioned him a few weeks ago. The trap was set. If she refused to invite Harlow, it would seem suspicious. If she agreed, Dom would have them both in his controlled environment. I don't really know him that well, Audrey stammered. No pressure. Just thought it would be good to expand our social circle. Dom kissed her cheek. I'm going to take Liam to see the Christmas lights downtown. Want to come? I have a migraine coming on. You two go. The moment they left, Tobias confirmed Audrey called Harlow in a panic. Dom listened to the recorded conversation in his car, while Liam was distracted by the holiday display. He knows something, Audrey hissed. He mentioned you specifically. Calm down, Harlow's accented voice replied. It could be coincidence. Did he seem suspicious? No, he's been attentive, loving even. Then we're fine. Accept the invitation. I'll come to dinner. We'll act like casual acquaintances. It might even help establish my presence in your lives for later. But what if? Audrey, darling, we've come too far to back out now. The supplements are working. Another week, maybe two, and it will look like natural causes. A tragic holiday heart attack. Just keep playing the devoted wife a little longer. Dom couldn't help but admire their confidence. They truly believed they were the predators rather than the prey. Later that night, after Liam was asleep, Dom added a crushed sleeping pill to Audrey's wine, just enough to ensure she wouldn't wake when he accessed her phone. While she slept, he meticulously documented her text exchanges with Harlow, transferred incriminating photos to his secure server, and placed a sophisticated tracking program on her device. Christmas Eve arrived with a blanket of fresh snow. Dom spent the morning preparing, not for dinner, but for the next phase of his revenge. He visited his bank, made several strategic transfers, and delivered sealed envelopes to his attorney with explicit instructions. When Audrey's parents arrived at 6 p.m., Dom greeted them warmly. Her father, Martin, returned the enthusiasm, but her mother, Patricia, studied her daughter with newfound suspicion, Dom's seeds of doubt already sprouting. Next came Dom's sister, Renata, with her husband and their teenage daughter. As a prosecutor for the district attorney's office, Renata had a natural suspicion that Dom was counting on. Tobias and his wife arrived at 6:30, followed immediately by Victor Harlow, who brought an expensive bottle of wine and European charm. Victor, so glad you could make it. Dom welcomed him with a firm handshake. Audrey's mentioned your gallery. I've been meaning to visit. The pleasure is mine, Harlow replied smoothly. Your home is exquisite. Dom watched as Harlow expertly worked the room, complimenting Patricia's earrings, discussing scotch with Martin, and engaging Renata's husband about his vintage car collection. He was good, perhaps too good. Several times during appetizers, Dom caught Audrey's warning glances toward her lover, silently urging restraint. Dinner was served at 7:30, a catered affair that allowed Dom to focus on his guests rather than cooking. He positioned Harlow directly across from Audrey, forcing them to limit their eye contact or risk revealing their connection. So, Victor, Dom said as the main course was served, how does one get into the art dealing business? It seems so specialized. Harlow launched into a practice story about apprenticing at a gallery in London, then establishing his own connections in the art world. Dom allowed him to spin his tale while subtly directing the conversation toward Harlow's background. And before London, where does one study to become an art dealer? A flicker of discomfort crossed Harlow's face. I'm largely self-taught. My formal education was in finance. Actually, the University of Cape Town. Dom nodded pleasantly. South Africa explains the accent. How fascinating. When did you move to the States? About 7 years ago. Started in New York, then Los Angeles, now Portland. Harlow sipped his wine. I follow the emerging art scenes. And the wealthy patrons, I imagine, Renata interjected with a prosecutor's instinct for weakness. Harlow smiled tightly. Art and commerce have always been intertwined. Speaking of commerce, Dom smoothly redirected. I understand your gallery is hosting a special exhibition next month? Yes, indeed. Modern sculptors from the Pacific Northwest. You and Audrey should attend the opening. Dom raised his glass. We be delighted. The evening progressed with superficial pleasantries, but underneath ran currents of tension. Dom observed Audrey's increasing discomfort as he continued to probe Harlow's background with seemingly innocent questions. By dessert, both conspirators were visibly on edge. As guests prepared to leave, Dom executed the evening's final maneuver. He pulled Harlow aside, ostensibly to show him a painting in his office. I understand you're quite knowledgeable about valuation, Dom said, closing the door behind them. I've been considering diversifying my investments. Harlow relaxed slightly, on familiar ground. Art could be an excellent investment vehicle. I'd be happy to advise you. Dom moved to his desk and opened a folder. Actually, I'm more interested in your opinion on these. He spread out surveillance photos of Harlow and Audrey, entering his apartment building, embracing one particularly explicit image of them in Harlow's car. The color drained from Harlow's face. These are quite compelling, Dom finished, his voice calm. As is the recording of you discussing how to poison me. Harlow's hand moved subtly toward his jacket pocket. I wouldn't, Dom warned. Tobias was military police for 12 years. He recognized the outline of your weapon the moment you arrived. It's why you're sitting across from rather than beside me. What do you want? Harlow asked, mask of charm completely dissolved. At the moment, nothing. Merely an introduction. Now you know who I am. Dom gathered the photos unhurriedly. We'll discuss terms after the holidays. Until then, continue as normal. You're blackmailing me? Dom's laugh held no humor. No, Mr. Harlow. I'm informing you of what's coming. Blackmail would imply you have a choice. When they rejoined the party, Harlow's composure had cracked. He made hasty goodbyes, avoiding Audrey's concerned glance. After all guests had departed and Liam was tucked in bed, Audrey confronted Dom in their bedroom. What did you say to Victor? He practically ran out of here. Dom removed his cufflinks calmly. We discussed art investments. Perhaps he's not as confident in the market as he claims. Audrey studied him, searching for signs he knew more than he revealed. Finding none in his carefully controlled expression, she retreated to the bathroom. Alone, Dom allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. The trap was set, the players positioned. Christmas morning would bring the next phase of his plan, one that would shatter the foundation of Audrey and Harlow's scheme while ensuring Dom maintained the moral and legal high ground. After all, revenge was meaningless if it cost him custody of Liam, and Dominic Veritas intended to take everything that mattered while leaving his enemies with nothing. Chapter 5. The Poison Chalice. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. Dom woke before Audrey, his mind cleared despite the complexities of his plan. Today would set in motion the destruction of Victor Harlow, while continuing to build the case against Audrey. Liam burst into their bedroom at 6:30 a.m., vibrating with excitement. Santa came. Can we open presents? Please, please, please. Dom laughed genuinely. His love for his son remained the one pure thing in his life. Let's let Mom wake up first, buddy. Audrey stirred, putting on a convincing show of Christmas enthusiasm for Liam's benefit. Dom watched her carefully, noting the moments when her smile didn't reach her eyes, cataloging each glance at her phone. Downstairs, surrounded by wrapping paper and ribbons, Dom presented Audrey with a small, elegant box. Merry Christmas, my love. Inside was a platinum bracelet studded with diamonds. Audrey's surprise seemed genuine as she clasped it on her wrist. It's beautiful, Dom. Thank you. She kissed him, maintaining their facade of marital bliss. Consider it the first of many gifts today, Dom replied with a cryptic smile. After breakfast, while Audrey cleaned up the kitchen, Dom slipped away to his office for a scheduled call with Tobias. Harlow left his apartment an hour ago, Tobias reported. Headed to the gallery. Perfect. Proceed as planned. Dom returned to family festivities, suggesting they take Liam sledding at the park in the afternoon. Audrey agreed, though she checked her phone repeatedly throughout the morning. Expecting a call? Dom asked innocently. Just checking the weather, she lied smoothly. At noon, as they prepared for sledding, Dom's phone rang. He answered, listened briefly, then frowned. Everything okay? Audrey asked. Slight problem at the gallery, Dom improvised. Water pipe burst. The security system alerted Tobias. Since we're heading out anyway, I'll swing by and check the damage. Shouldn't take long. Audrey's expression shifted from concern to concealed panic. Victor's gallery? Why would your security system? Not Victor's. The riverfront gallery space. Dom maintained an innocent expression. Part of the development project. Why would you think of Victor's place? Since we were just talking about him last night. Her recovery was quick but insufficient. I'll meet you both at the park, Dom said, grabbing his coat. Start sledding without me. As he drove, Dom received confirmation from Tobias that everything was proceeding according to plan. 3 of his most trusted employees had entered Harlow's gallery through the back entrance, disabled the security cameras, and were awaiting further instructions. Harlow looked up in surprise when Dom walked through the front door of his otherwise empty gallery. We're closed for Christmas, he said, tension evident in his shoulders. Dom smiled coldly. I'm not here as a customer. Your threats won't work, Harlow said, attempting bravado. I've handled worse than you. Have you? Dom circled the gallery slowly, examining paintings with feigned interest. 3 wealthy women in 5 years. Quite the profitable pattern until now. Harlow blanched. You don't know what you're talking about. Sandra Mercer in Los Angeles. Divorced her husband 6 months after meeting you. Dead from apparent suicide 3 months later. You disappeared with approximately $2 million. Dom paused before a large abstract canvas. Then Elizabeth Cornell in San Francisco. Widowed, inexplicably changed her will to include you. Died of accidental overdose. Another $3 million. This is absurd. Then the fraud charges that mysteriously disappeared when the primary witness recanted. Very convenient. Dom turned to face Harlow directly. You're sloppy, Victor, or whatever your real name is. Harlow's hand moved toward his desk. My men are already here, Dom said quietly. 3 of them. Ex-military, like Tobias. Currently holding position in your back office, your storage room, and by your private elevator. Would you like to meet them? The gallery owner froze, calculation replacing fear in his eyes. What do you want from me? Your complete cooperation, Dom replied simply. Starting with your phone. After initial resistance, Harlow surrendered his device. Dom's tech specialist remotely accessed it, downloading messages, photos, and call logs documenting his relationship with Audrey and their murder plot. Now for phase 2, Dom continued. You're going to call Audrey and break things off. Tell her you've been discovered, that you're leaving town immediately. She'll never believe that. We have a plan to murder me and take my fortune. Yes, I'm aware. Dom's voice remained eerily calm. But plans change when variables shift. I'm a variable you failed to properly calculate. For the next hour, Dom outlined exactly what Harlow would say to Audrey. The gallery owner's resistance crumbled as Dom methodically revealed the extent of his knowledge, not just of their affair and murder plot, but of Harlow's numerous financial irregularities, the falsified provenance papers for several pieces in his gallery, and his real identity, Vincent Hargrove, wanted in the UK for art fraud. You make the call now, on speaker, Dom instructed. Deviate from the script, and those fraud charges in California will suddenly be back on the table, along with new evidence concerning Sandra Mercer's suicide. Trapped, Harlow complied. When Audrey answered, he launched into the prepared speech about being exposed, about Dom's business associates asking questions, about needing to leave the country immediately. What are you talking about? Audrey's voice was frantic. Victor, we discussed this. Nothing's changed. Everything's changed, Harlow replied, genuine fear bleeding into his performance. Your husband is not who we thought. I'm leaving tonight. You should consider doing the same. But the plan. Forget the plan. Harlow nearly shouted, his eyes locked on Dom's impassive face. It's over, Audrey. I'm sorry. After the call ended, Dom smiled thinly. Very convincing. Now, for your departure. You're letting me go? Disbelief colored Harlow's voice. In a manner of speaking, Dom's men emerged from their positions surrounding Harlow. One held a syringe. What is that? Panic returned to Harlow's features. The same poison you and my wife planned for me, Dom answered. Poetic, don't you think? But unlike your plan, this won't kill you. just render you unconscious for transport. Despite his struggles, Harlow was efficiently subdued. As the drug took effect, Dom leaned close. You chose the wrong family to target, Victor. By this time tomorrow, you'll wish I had simply turned you over to the police. Dom checked his watch. Barely an hour had passed. Plenty of time to join Audrey and Liam at the park, to maintain his alibi, while Tobias's team transported an unconscious Victor Harlow to a remote property Dom owned in eastern Oregon. At the sledding hill, Dom found Audrey distracted and pale, checking her phone repeatedly. Liam, oblivious to the adult tensions, demanded Dom's participation in building a snow fort. Is everything okay? Dom asked Audrey with manufactured concern. You seem worried. Fine, she replied automatically. How was the gallery? Much damage from the water? Less than expected, Dom answered truthfully. The damage to Harlow's gallery and life was precisely what he had anticipated. That evening, as they prepared for Christmas dinner, Audrey received a text from an anonymous number. Actually, Dom, using a burner phone. Flight landed. Heading south. Will contact when safe. Dom watched as relief flickered across her face, followed by confusion. Her lover had abandoned their plan, but was apparently still communicating. The uncertainty would destabilize her, make her vulnerable to Dom's next move. After Liam was asleep, surrounded by new toys, Audrey retreated to their bedroom, claiming a headache. Dom allowed her space, knowing she would attempt to contact Harlow. In his office, he monitored her futile efforts through the spyware on her phone. Each unanswered call, each undelivered message increased her panic. By midnight, she was frantic, her careful plotting unraveling as her co-conspirator had seemingly vanished. Meanwhile, Dom received confirmation from Tobias. Harlow had been secured at the remote property, a former hunting lodge now repurposed for Dom's needs. The gallery's security footage had been altered to show Harlow leaving voluntarily with a suitcase. His apartment appeared hastily abandoned, passport and essential documents missing. To all appearances, Victor Harlow had fled Oregon in a panic. Dom sipped his scotch, contemplating the next phase. Harlow's disappearance would pressure Audrey, potentially driving her to desperate measures. Dangerous, but necessary. To achieve true revenge, Dom needed her to reveal herself completely, to transform from calculated conspirator to exposed predator. Only then could he deliver the final blow with absolute legal and moral justification. Tomorrow would begin Audrey's systematic destruction. Her lover gone, her plans in shambles, she would face the full consequences of crossing Dominic Veritas. As Christmas night deepened, Dom allowed himself a rare moment of genuine emotion. Cold, focused rage. These people had planned to leave his son without a father, had plotted his death over intimate dinners and between stolen kisses. The punishment he planned wasn't just revenge. It was justice. Chapter 6, The Unraveling. The week between Christmas and New Year's unfolded according to Dom's careful design. While maintaining a facade of normalcy for Liam's benefit, he systematically dismantled Audrey's security and sense of control. First came financial pressure. Dom quietly restricted access to their joint accounts, citing unusual activity to the bank. Audrey discovered this when her credit card was declined during a shopping trip. There must be some mistake, she told Dom that evening. My card was rejected at Nordstrom. Dom frowned with convincing concern. That's strange. I'll call the bank in the morning. Probably just holiday fraud protection. Use cash for now. Of course, when Audrey checked their safe, half of the emergency cash was mysteriously missing. Next came social isolation. Dom casually mentioned to their friends that Audrey hadn't been feeling well lately, perhaps the stress of the holidays. He suggested they give her space, effectively cutting off her support network without raising suspicion. At the same time, he increased his own visibility as a devoted husband and father. He left work early, brought home dinner, organized family movie nights. To outsiders, Dom appeared to be compensating for his workaholic tendencies, finally prioritizing family. 3 days after Christmas, Dom implemented the next phase, surveillance anxiety. He mentioned installing a new security system after that break-in down the street. The cameras will cover all entry points, he explained as technicians worked throughout the house. And the monitoring service alerts my phone if there's unusual activity. The message was clear. Audrey's movements were being watched. Her home was no longer a safe space for plotting. Meanwhile, Victor Harlow remained at the remote property, his disappearance now generating whispers in Portland's art community. Dom arranged for a concerned client to file a police report, ensuring official attention while controlling the narrative. Detective Roland Keyes, an old acquaintance who owed Dom a favor, was assigned to the case. He interviewed Dom regarding Harlow's attendance at their Christmas Eve dinner. Seemed perfectly normal, Dom told the detective in his office, with Tobias present as a witness. Mentioned some upcoming travels, but nothing specific. Is something wrong? Probably nothing, Keyes replied. His gallery assistant reported him missing after he failed to return for a scheduled appointment. His apartment looks like he packed in a hurry. Any chance your wife might know more? I understand they had some professional contact regarding artwork. Dom frowned thoughtfully. She never mentioned anything beyond basic business interactions. But you're welcome to speak with her. The detective's interview with Audrey, which Dom observed from his home office via the new security cameras, revealed her growing distress. She maintained composure while claiming minimal acquaintance with Harlow, but her eyes darted nervously to her phone throughout the conversation. That evening, Dom discovered her frantically searching through his office files. Looking for something? He asked from the doorway. Audrey startled violently. I need the insurance paperwork. For my car. The registration renewal. In the filing cabinet under Vehicles, Dom replied mildly. Though I'm surprised you'd need that at 11 o'clock at night. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the correct folder. Dom noticed she also glanced at the insurance life folder before closing the drawer. Is everything all right, Audrey? You seem on edge lately. Just holiday stress, she muttered, avoiding his gaze. You'd tell me if something was bothering you, wouldn't you? We don't keep secrets from each other. The irony hung heavy in the air between them. Of course, she lied. The following day, Dom received word from Tobias. Harlow had finally broken. After 5 days of isolation, psychological pressure, and a strategic application of fear, the art dealer had provided a complete confession, documented on video. He's detailed everything, Tobias reported. The affair, the murder plot, previous victims. Even provided account numbers for his offshore holdings. Perfect, Dom replied. Maintain his isolation. I'll need him coherent for the final phase. That night, Dom executed his masterstroke. While Audrey slept, aided by the sedative he'd added to her wine, he accessed her laptop. Rather than simply gathering evidence, he planted it. Emails supposedly recovered from deletion showing her correspondence with Harlow, discussing Dom's murder and the insurance payout. The emails were carefully backdated and contained just enough factual information to be convincing, while including details that could be verified through other evidence Dom had collected. He then placed a call from Audrey's phone to Detective Keyes' office, immediately disconnecting, a seemingly accidental dial that would appear in phone records, suggesting panic. The next morning, New Year's Eve, Dom suggested they spend the day as a family. Let's take Liam to the Science Museum, then have an early dinner. He can watch the East Coast ball drop before bedtime. Audrey agreed distractedly, her attention clearly elsewhere. Throughout the museum visit, she checked her phone compulsively, growing increasingly agitated when no messages arrived. At the restaurant, while Liam was distracted by dessert, Dom leaned forward. You seem troubled all week. Is there something you want to talk about, Audrey? For a moment, indecision flickered across her face. Dom could almost see her calculating. Confession? New plan? Continued deception? I'm fine, she finally said. Just tired. You know you can tell me anything. Dom pressed, his voice gentle. Whatever it is, we can work through it together. The offer of false salvation, the suggestion that confession might lead to forgiveness, was the final psychological pressure point. That night, after Liam was asleep, Audrey broke. Dom found her in their bathroom, a glass of wine in hand, tears streaming down her face. What's happened? He asked, maintaining his concerned husband persona. Victor's gone, she whispered. He's just gone. The art dealer? What do you mean gone? We were. She swallowed hard. We were involved. Dom allowed shock and hurt to transform his features. Involved? You mean? We were having an affair. Audrey confessed, words tumbling out. For months. And now he's disappeared and I don't know what to do. Dom stepped back, letting betrayal replace concern. How could you do this? To me? To our family. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I made a terrible mistake. But Dom, I'm scared. Something's wrong. Victor wouldn't just leave like this. What aren't you telling me? Dom demanded. Was it just an affair, or was there more? Audrey's eyes widened. What do you mean? The Christmas lights, Audrey. The frayed wires. Liam said you were scraping them with a knife. That was an accident. I was trying to fix them. Was it? Dom's voice hardened. Or was it something else? Something involving Victor and my life insurance policy? Her face crumpled. It wasn't. We didn't. Dom pulled out his phone, revealing the surveillance photos of her with Harlow. Don't lie to me anymore. I know everything. Audrey collapsed onto the bathroom floor, all pretense abandoned. He said no one would get hurt, that we would just pressure you to sign the business over. The lights were just to scare you, to make you think accidents were happening around you. And the supplements? The poison? Her shock was genuine. How did you? I've known for weeks, Audrey. Every plot, every plan, every meeting with your lover. Did you really think I wouldn't protect myself? That I would just die conveniently while you collected millions? Rage replaced fear in her eyes. You arrogant bastard. You were never home. Always at work. Always with your precious projects. Victor appreciated me, valued me. Victor Harlow appreciated your access to my money, Dom corrected coldly. Just like he appreciated Sandra Mercer's and Elizabeth Cornell's before you. Did he tell you about them? His previous lovers who died mysteriously after changing their wills in his favor. The color drained from Audrey's face. You're lying. Am I? Perhaps you should ask Detective Keyes about Victor's background. Oh wait, you already called him, didn't you? From your phone last night around 2 a.m. I didn't call anyone. The phone records say otherwise. Dom's smile was devoid of warmth. Just like the recovered emails detailing your murder plot say otherwise. Audrey lunged for the bathroom door, but Dom blocked her path. It's too late for running, Audrey. Far too late. As midnight approached and distant fireworks began celebrating the new year, Dominic Veritas laid out the consequences of his wife's betrayal. There would be no police involvement, yet. No public scandal. Instead, Audrey would sign divorce papers giving Dom full custody of Liam and relinquishing all claims to his assets. In return, the evidence of your murder plot stays private, Dom concluded. You walk away with nothing but your freedom. Refuse, and Detective Keyes receives everything. The recordings, the emails, Harlow's confession. Confession, Audrey whispered. You've spoken to Victor? Dom's smile chilled her. Let's just say Victor and I have come to an understanding about his role in all this. He's been quite forthcoming. Defeated, Audrey signed the papers Dom produced from his briefcase. As she scrawled her signature, tears splashing onto the documents, Dom felt neither satisfaction nor relief, only cold confirmation that justice was being served. Pack a bag, he instructed. You'll stay at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow, you'll leave Portland. I don't care where you go, but you will never contact Liam or me again. You can't keep me from my son, Audrey protested weakly. Dom placed a final document before her. This is a confession detailing your affair with Harlow and your plot to murder me. Sign it, and it remains sealed unless you violate our agreement. Challenge me for custody, attempt contact, speak to anyone about what happened here, and it goes straight to the police. As Audrey signed with a shaking hand, Dom added, Your lover made the same arrangement. Neither of you can implicate the other without destroying yourselves. The perfect trap, mutually assured destruction that ensured both conspirators' silence and cooperation. While Audrey packed, Dom called Tobias with new instructions regarding Harlow. The art dealer would be released, with evidence of his past crimes held as insurance against any future trouble. By 1 a.m., Audrey was gone from the house, escorted by one of Tobias's men to a downtown hotel. By morning, she would be on a plane to wherever she chose to rebuild her shattered life, as long as it was far from Dom and Liam. Dom poured himself a celebratory scotch and gazed out at the winter night, the Christmas tree's lights reflecting in the window. Phase 1 of his revenge was complete. Audrey and Harlow were separated, neutralized, and facing the consequences of their betrayal. But Dominic Veritas wasn't finished. Not by far. The real punishment was yet to come. Chapter 7. The Ruthless Reckoning. 6 months passed. Spring turned to summer, and the initial shock of Audrey's departure had settled into a new normal for Dom and Liam. Dom had crafted a careful narrative for his son and their social circle. Audrey had suffered a nervous breakdown and was receiving treatment at a private facility in Arizona. Dom presented himself as the supportive husband, sending regular care packages and facilitating occasional phone calls between mother and son. These calls, of course, were carefully monitored. Audrey, bound by their agreement and the damning evidence Dom held, played her role perfectly, speaking vaguely about getting better and promising to come home when the doctors say it's time. For Liam's sake, Dom maintained this fiction flawlessly. In private, however, he was executing the second phase of his revenge: systematic destruction of both betrayers' lives from afar. Victor Harlow, released from his captivity with a clear understanding of the consequences should he cause trouble, had fled to Montreal. There, he attempted to establish himself in the art scene under a slightly modified name. Dom ensured his efforts failed spectacularly. Anonymous tips to Canadian authorities regarding art fraud led to raids on Harlow's new gallery. Key clients received disturbing information about his business practices. Landlords mysteriously backed out of rental agreements. Financial institutions flagged his accounts for suspicious activity. Within 3 months, Harlow was functionally blacklisted throughout the Canadian art world. His debts mounted as his income evaporated. Meanwhile, Audrey had settled in San Diego, attempting to rebuild her life with a modest settlement Dom had generously provided, just enough to maintain appearances without offering real financial security. She found work at an upscale boutique, rented a small apartment, and began dating a divorced restaurant owner named Paul. Dom watched it all unfold through the reports from the private investigators he'd retained. Every small victory in Audrey's new life became a target for his meticulous interference. The boutique mysteriously received complaints about Audrey from customers. Her apartment building changed ownership to a company requiring more stringent background checks, leading to uncomfortable questions about her past. Paul received an anonymous letter detailing Audrey's psychiatric history and suggesting he research her ex-husband's substantial life insurance policy. Each setback was designed to be deniable, untraceable to Dom, yet devastating to Audrey's stability and peace of mind. She would never know security or trust again. On a sunny July morning, Dom received a call from Tobias with unexpected news. Victor Harlow had been found dead in his Montreal apartment, an apparent suicide. Overdose, Tobias reported. Left a note mentioning financial troubles and unforgivable mistakes from my past. Canadian authorities are treating it as straightforward. Dom absorbed this information without emotion. Any mention of Audrey or me? None. The note was mostly apologies to someone named Elizabeth. Presumably Elizabeth Cornell, his previous victim. Make sure our contacts verify it's actually him, not some desperate final deception. Already done. Fingerprints confirm identity. He's gone, boss. Dom hung up, contemplating this development. Harlow's death hadn't been part of his plan. He'd wanted the man to suffer indefinitely, but simplified matters. One loose end permanently tied off. That evening, as Dom helped Liam with his summer reading, his phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. You killed him, didn't you? Is this what you want from me too? Audrey, her first direct communication outside their scripted calls. Dom typed back calmly, I have no idea what you're talking about. Focus on your recovery. Her response came instantly. Bullshit. Victor's dead. I know you're behind it. Behind everything that's happening to me. Wrong number, Dom replied, then blocked her. 20 minutes later, his home security system alerted him to an emergency call from Liam's phone. The boy was calling 911 from his bedroom. Dom rushed upstairs to find his son panic-stricken, phone in hand. Mom called me, Liam cried. She said bad men were coming to hurt us because of what you did. She told me to call the police. Dom gently took the phone, ending the call before it connected. Your mom is confused, buddy. Remember how the doctors said her mind plays tricks sometimes? But she sounded really scared, Dad. She was crying. I know, and I'm sorry that upset you. Dom sat beside his son. Sometimes when people are sick like Mom, they believe things that aren't real. Nothing bad is going to happen to us. After calming Liam with reassurances and a bedtime story, Dom returned to his office and made a call. She's escalating, he told Nora Blackwell, his attorney. Time for the restraining order and to revisit custody arrangements. The next morning, Audrey was served with legal papers at her apartment, a temporary restraining order prohibiting contact with Liam, citing her delusional behavior and attempts to frighten a minor child. The custody agreement they'd signed allowed for supervised visitation, rights contingent on Audrey's continued mental stability. This incident provided perfect grounds to terminate those rights. 2 days later, Dom received another call from Tobias. Audrey had been arrested in San Diego for attempting to purchase an illegal firearm from an undercover officer. That wasn't us, Dom said, genuinely surprised. No, sir. Appears she sought out the connection herself. Told the dealer she needed protection from her dangerous ex-husband. Dom considered this development. Audrey's spiral was accelerating faster than he'd anticipated. The combination of Harlow's death, her increasing isolation, and the loss of contact with Liam had pushed her towards self-destruction. Have our attorney in San Diego offer assistance, Dom instructed. Post her bail, but ensure the conditions include psychiatric evaluation. Helping her boss? Tobias sounded confused. Controlling the narrative, Dom corrected. I want her evaluated by professionals of our choosing. Her instability documented officially. It's the final piece we need. The psychiatric evaluation diagnosed Audrey with paranoid delusions centering on her ex-husband. Her claims about Dom's systematic destruction of her life, the murder of her lover, and the Christmas lights attempt were dismissed as elaborate persecutory fantasies. When she became increasingly agitated during questioning, insisting that Dom had tortured Victor Harlow into producing a false confession, the psychiatrist recommended involuntary commitment for her own safety. 3 days after her arrest, Audrey McAllister, formerly Veritas, was committed to Ocean View Psychiatric Hospital for a 30-day evaluation period. Dom received the news with grim satisfaction. She had conspired to murder him, to leave Liam fatherless for money. Now she would experience what it meant to have her freedom and identity stripped away, not for days or weeks, but permanently. Because Dominic Veritas had one final move to make. With Audrey institutionalized, Dom filed for permanent sole custody of Liam, citing her severe mental illness and dangerous delusions. The court date was set for August 15th, 1 week after Audrey's scheduled release from Ocean View. Meanwhile, Dom arranged for Liam to attend a prestigious summer camp for the next 3 weeks, removing him from the equation while Dom implemented the final phase of his plan. On August 1st, Audrey received her first visitor at Ocean View, Renata Veritas, Dom's sister. Dom doesn't know I'm here, Renata told her, voice low despite the private visitation room. But I've been concerned about certain things I've noticed. Hope flickered in Audrey's eyes. You believe me? Let's say I have questions. Renata slid a notepad across the table. Write down everything, dates, details, names. Don't speak aloud. The staff reports everything back to Dom. For the next hour, Audrey furiously documented her claims. The affair with Harlow, their plot against Dom, his discovery and retaliation, Victor's disappearance, and the systematic dismantling of her new life. When she finished, Renata took the pages, promising to investigate discreetly. The custody hearing is in 2 weeks, Renata reminded her. If what you've written is true, we need proof before then. Audrey leaned forward urgently. Check Victor's gallery in Portland. The basement storage room has a false wall. That's where Dom would have taken him. Renata's eyes widened with convincing shock. How do you know about a false wall? Victor showed me once. It's where he kept his most valuable pieces. Dom must have found it when he interrogated Victor. Renata nodded gravely. I'll check it out. Hang in there, Audrey. The truth will come out. After Renata left, Audrey felt real hope for the first time in months. Someone finally believed her. Someone was investigating. What she didn't know was that Renata had driven directly to Dom's office to deliver the confession she'd skillfully extracted, a confession that now detailed not just the murder plot, but Audrey's knowledge of secret spaces in Harlow's gallery, where evidence might be hidden. That night, Dom and Tobias visited the now-abandoned gallery. Using Audrey's detailed description, they located the concealed room behind a storage shelf. Perfect, Dom said, surveying the space. Plant the evidence here. Her fingerprints are still on file from the arrest, correct? Yes, boss. We can place them on the key items. Do it. And make sure Detective Keyes receives an anonymous tip about this location on August 13th, 2 days before the custody hearing. The trap was set for Audrey's final downfall. Upon her release from Ocean View, she would believe Renata was working to help her. In reality, she was walking into a carefully constructed legal nightmare that would ensure she never saw Liam again. The evidence planted in Harlow's secret room included detailed plans for Dom's murder, financial documents showing how Audrey would access his accounts after his death, and pharmaceutical research on untraceable poisons, all bearing Audrey's fingerprints or handwriting. Most damning of all was a flash drive containing video of Audrey and Harlow discussing their plan, carefully edited from legitimate surveillance footage combined with advanced deepfake technology. The video quality was deliberately imperfect, just enough to be admissible while disguising the technical manipulation. On August 10th, Audrey was released from Ocean View with instructions to continue outpatient treatment. She immediately called Renata, desperate for updates. "I found something," Renata confirmed. "But it's complicated. We need to meet in person. Come to my office tomorrow morning." Hope renewed, Audrey spent the night preparing for the custody hearing, organizing her thoughts, gathering what little evidence she had of Dom's manipulation. The next morning, she arrived at Renata's law office only to find Detective Keyes waiting instead. "Ms. McAllister," he greeted her formally. "I need to ask you some questions about Victor Harlow and a potential conspiracy to commit murder." The blood drained from Audrey's face. "Where's Renata?" "Ms. Veritas called me after discovering some disturbing information," Keyes explained. She felt legally obligated to report it. Renata's betrayal struck Audrey like a physical blow. She trusted Dom's sister, believed she was an ally. The questioning lasted hours. Every explanation Audrey offered was countered with evidence of her guilt. Her insistence that Dom had framed her only reinforced the psychiatric evaluation's conclusion of paranoid delusions. When Keyes finally placed her under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, Audrey collapsed in defeated sobs. "He won," she whispered. "He destroyed everything." On August 15th, as Audrey sat in county jail awaiting arraignment, the family court granted Dom permanent sole custody of Liam. The judge cited Audrey's severe mental illness, violent tendencies, and ongoing criminal proceedings as ground for terminating all parental rights. That evening, Dom celebrated his victory quietly in his home office. Audrey faced years in prison. Her reputation, freedom, and relationship with Liam were permanently destroyed. Even if she somehow avoided conviction, she would remain forever branded as mentally unstable, her claims about Dom's machinations dismissed as delusions. As for Harlow, his death had been convenient but unnecessary for Dom's plans. The man had destroyed himself, crushed under the pressure of losing everything he'd built through manipulation and fraud. Dom poured himself a congratulatory scotch and gazed at the photo of Liam on his desk. Everything he'd done had been to protect his son, to ensure the boy would never again be used as a pawn in someone else's scheme. Tomorrow, he would pick up Liam from summer camp. They would begin their new life together, free from Audrey's betrayal and Harlow's manipulations. Dominic Veritas had faced the ultimate betrayal and responded with calculated, merciless justice. Those who had conspired to destroy him had instead destroyed themselves. As he had told Harlow months ago, he played to win. Always. Chapter 8. The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. 3 years passed with the relentless efficiency that characterized Dom's life. Liam grew from a confused 6-year-old to a thoughtful 9-year-old who rarely mentioned his mother anymore. The official story, that Audrey had suffered a mental breakdown culminating in criminal behavior, was accepted without question by their social circle. Dom had rebuilt their lives methodically. They'd moved to a new home in Lake Oswego, away from the memories of betrayal. Veritas Construction had expanded into Seattle and San Francisco. Dom had even begun dating occasionally. Nothing serious, just enough to present the image of a well-adjusted single father moving forward. Audrey remained incarcerated at the Oregon Women's Correctional Facility, serving a 12-year sentence for conspiracy to commit murder. Her appeals had been denied, her claims of Dom's manipulation dismissed as further evidence of her delusions. As for Victor Harlow, he existed now only as a footnote in Portland's art community, a talented but troubled dealer who had died under regrettable circumstances. The perfect December evening found Dom and Liam decorating their Christmas tree, a tradition Dom had carefully maintained despite its painful associations. "Dad," Liam asked, hanging a handmade ornament. "Do you ever miss Mom?" The question caught Dom off guard. Liam rarely initiated conversations about Audrey anymore. "I miss the person I thought she was," Dom answered carefully. "The mother who loved you very much." Liam nodded, absorbing this. "Mrs. Kelsey says that sometimes sick people get better. Could Mom get better someday?" Mrs. Kelsey was Liam's therapist, a necessary support Dom had arranged following Audrey's departure and subsequent imprisonment. "Mental illness is complicated," Dom explained. "Some people recover, others don't. The important thing is that you're safe and loved. Could I write her a Christmas card?" Mrs. Kelsey said it might help me process my feelings. Dom hesitated. Direct contact with Audrey wasn't part of his plan. He'd worked diligently to sever that connection, to ensure Liam would eventually forget the woman who had been willing to leave him motherless for money and a lover. But refusing might raise questions, might make Liam suspicious of the narrative Dom had constructed. "I think I'll be fine," Dom conceded. "I'll help you send it to the facility." Later that night, after reviewing Liam's innocuous card, filled with details about school and Christmas wishes, Dom confronted an unexpected emotion: doubt. Not about Audrey's guilt or the justice of her punishment. Those remained certainties in Dom's mind, but about the totality of his revenge, its extension to complete erasure of a mother from her child's life. This wasn't weakness, Dom assured himself. It was strategic calculation. Liam was growing more perceptive. Eventually, he would investigate his mother's story himself. Better to control that narrative now than face difficult questions later. The next day, Dom made 2 calls. First to Nora Blackwell, instructing her to arrange a supervised visit with Audrey at the correctional facility. "Are you sure about this?" Nora asked, concern evident. "After everything?" "It's for Liam," Dom explained. "A brief visit, heavily supervised. It will provide closure." His second call was to Tobias, who had transitioned from security chief to Dom's right hand at Veritas Construction. "I need complete surveillance on the visit. Recording devices, additional guards, everything." "Understood, boss. But why risk it? She's contained." "Loose ends," Dom replied simply. "I want to see her face to face, assess any remaining threat." In reality, Dom's motivations were more complex. The completeness of his victory demanded this final confirmation. Seeing Audrey broken, defeated, her spirit crushed under the weight of her imprisonment and isolation. 1 week before Christmas, Dom drove Liam to the correctional facility. He prepared his son carefully, explaining that his mother had done very bad things, but still cared about him. The visitor's room was sterile and impersonal. Audrey was already seated at a table when they entered, a guard standing nearby. 3 years of incarceration had aged her dramatically. Her once vibrant copper hair was dull and streaked with gray. Deep lines etched her face. Her prison uniform hung loose on her diminished frame. But her eyes, when they locked on Liam, they blazed with an intensity that unsettled Dom. Not the dead eyes of the thoroughly defeated. "Liam," she whispered, rising halfway before the guard motioned her back down. "Oh my God, you've grown so much." Liam approached cautiously, clutching Dom's hand. "Hi, Mom. You look so handsome, just like your dad. Her voice caught on the last word, eyes flickering to Dom with naked hatred before returning to the practiced warmth directed at her son. For 30 minutes, Audrey asked Liam gentle questions about school, friends, his hobbies. She laughed at his jokes, praised his accomplishments, behaved exactly like the loving mother she'd once pretended to be. Dom watched silently, evaluating every word, every gesture. This wasn't the broken woman he'd expected. This was someone who had adapted, who had constructed a new version of herself, one that could survive imprisonment while maintaining some essential core. When the visit concluded, Audrey hugged Liam tightly, whispering something in his ear that Dom couldn't catch. In the car, Dom asked casually, "What did Mom say to you at the end?" Liam buckled his seatbelt. "She said she was sorry she couldn't be with me, but that she thinks about me every day." Dom nodded, satisfied with the innocuous response. "Did you like seeing her?" "I guess. She seemed sad." "Prison is a sad place," Dom acknowledged. "That's why we avoid doing things that put us there." The visit had served its purpose. Liam had seen his mother, received some measure of closure, and Dom had confirmed Audrey no longer posed any threat to their carefully reconstructed lives. 3 days before Christmas, however, Dom received an unexpected call from the correctional facility. Audrey had attempted suicide, swallowing pills hoarded from her psychiatric medication. "She's stable," the warden informed him, "but she left a note addressed to you and Liam. Protocol requires we notify you." "What does it say?" "I'm not at liberty to share the contents, Mr. Veritas, but you're welcome to come read it in person." Dom considered refusing, then recognized the opportunity to ensure whatever accusations the note contained would never reach Liam. At the facility, the warden handed Dom a sealed envelope. "She's in an infirmary under suicide watch. The psychologist believes seeing her son after years of separation triggered this episode." Dom opened the letter alone in a private room. "Dom, seeing Liam broke something in me that even prison couldn't touch. I realized I'll never be his mother again. You've made sure of that. You've won completely. I did terrible things. The affair, the plans with Victor, I deserve punishment. But what you did in return wasn't justice. It was monstrous. The methodical destruction of 2 lives to satisfy your need for control. I've had 3 years to reflect on what happened, to understand that you didn't just discover our plot. You transformed it into an opportunity for complete dominance. The Victor the First knew was weak and greedy, but he wasn't suicidal. Whatever you did to him broke him entirely. You weren't satisfied with divorce or even imprisonment. You needed to eradicate me from existence, to make Liam forget me, to destroy every aspect of my personhood. I'm tired of fighting the monster you revealed yourself to be. Your perfect revenge is complete. I hope it brings you the satisfaction you sought. Tell Liam I love him. It's the only truth that matters anymore. Audrey." Dom reread the letter twice, searching for hidden threats or manipulations. Finding none, he folded it precisely and placed it in his pocket. The accusation of monstrous behavior didn't trouble him. Audrey had plotted his death for financial gain, had been willing to orphan Liam for money and a lover. Her perspective on proportionate justice was irrelevant. Yet something in her words lingered uncomfortably. Not guilt. Dom felt no remorse for destroying those who had tried to destroy him, but a question about necessity, about where justice ended and vengeance began. He shook off the unwelcome introspection. Dominic Veritas didn't second-guess his decisions. He made them decisively and lived with the consequences. The warden reappeared. "Will you be visiting Ms. McAllister in the infirmary?" "No," Dom replied definitively. "That chapter is closed." On Christmas Eve, as Dom and Liam continued their tradition of driving through neighborhoods to admire holiday decorations, his phone rang with an unknown number. "Mr. Veritas?" An unfamiliar voice. "This is Chaplain Reynolds from the correctional facility. I'm calling about Audrey McAllister." Dom's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "What about her?" "She's asked me to contact you. She's made a second attempt. More serious this time. The doctors aren't optimistic." "I see." Dom kept his voice neutral, aware of Liam singing along to Christmas music beside him. "She's requested to see her son one last time." I understand the complicated circumstances, but— No, Dom interrupted firmly. That's not possible. A pause. Mr. Veritas, whatever occurred between you and Ms. McAllister, this appears to be a genuine deathbed request. As a man of faith, I urge you to consider. The answer is no. Goodbye, Chaplain. Dom ended the call, pushing away the unwelcome question of whether even his ruthlessness had limits. Audrey had tried to kill him. She had forfeited any right to compassion, any claim to motherhood. If she died tonight, it would be the final line in a story Dom had written, the complete erasure of a threat to his family. The perfect revenge, executed flawlessly over years. Yet as they returned home and prepared for Christmas morning, Dom found himself returning to Audrey's letter. You transformed it into an opportunity for complete dominance. Had he simply responded with appropriate force to an existential threat? Later that night, after Liam was asleep, Dom's phone rang again, the chaplain. She's gone, Mr. Veritas. Audrey passed 20 minutes ago. Dom absorbed this information without visible reaction. I understand. She regained consciousness briefly at the end. Asked me to tell you something. The chaplain's voice held no judgment, only solemn purpose. She said, tell Dom he was right about Victor. He was using me, but wrong about Christmas. I never wanted to hurt Liam's father. I just wanted to scare you into paying attention to us again. After hanging up, Dom poured himself a scotch and stood before the Christmas tree. The same lights that had started everything 3 years ago glowed softly, illuminating ornaments collected over a lifetime, before and after Audrey. Had she been telling the truth at the end? Had the Christmas lights truly been meant as a warning rather than an attempt on his life? Had he built his elaborate revenge on a misinterpretation? No, the evidence had been clear. The supplements, the poison, the conspiracy with Harlow. Whatever revisionist history Audrey had created in her final moments couldn't change the documented facts. Dom finished his scotch, mentally closing the final chapter of Audrey McAllister's story. She had betrayed him, conspired against him, and paid the ultimate price. Justice had been served completely and irrevocably. Tomorrow would be Christmas morning. Liam would wake excited to open presents, blissfully unaware that his mother had died alone in a prison infirmary. Eventually, Dom would tell him. Another carefully constructed narrative that protected Liam while ensuring Audrey remained a cautionary tale rather than a person worthy of mourning. As he climbed the stairs to bed, Dom felt no triumph in Audrey's death, no satisfaction beyond the knowledge that this chapter was finally, permanently closed. His revenge had been methodical, comprehensive, and ultimately fatal, just as he had intended from the moment he discovered her betrayal. Dominic Veritas protected what was his. Always. Without mercy, without forgiveness, and without regret. Chapter 9. The Price of Victory. 5 years after Audrey's death, Dominic Veritas stood at the pinnacle of success. Veritas Construction had expanded into an international development firm. Their Lake Oswego home had been replaced by a modern architectural masterpiece overlooking the Columbia River. 14-year-old Liam was thriving, academically gifted, socially confident, the perfect reflection of his father's strength and ambition. The scars of betrayal had faded to nearly invisible lines, referenced only in occasional questions from Liam about the mother he barely remembered. She was troubled. Dom would explain with practiced neutrality. Mental illness, poor choices. She loved you, but couldn't overcome her demons. The narrative satisfied Liam's curiosity without revealing the uglier truths. The affair, the murder plot, Dom's meticulously executed revenge. Those details remained buried in sealed court records and Dom's carefully compartmentalized memory. On a crisp December afternoon, Dom sat in his expansive office reviewing year-end reports when his assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Detective Roland Keyes is here to see you, sir. He says it's urgent. Dom frowned. He hadn't spoken to Keyes in years, not since Audrey's conviction. Send him in. Keyes had aged significantly. Hair now completely gray, face lined with the weathering of a career spent confronting human darkness. But his eyes remained sharp, assessing. Dominic, he greeted without warmth. Been a while. Detective, what brings you here? I thought you'd retired. Semi-retired. Consulting on cold cases. Keyes settled into a chair uninvited, including some interesting loose ends from Victor Harlow's death. Dom maintained perfect composure. Harlow's suicide was thoroughly investigated years ago. What loose ends could possibly remain? That's the interesting part. A gallery in Montreal was renovated recently. Construction crew found a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside was a waterproof case containing a journal and USB drive. Keyes placed a file on Dom's desk. Harlow's final testament, recorded before his suicide. Dom didn't touch the file. And this concerns me because he names you specifically, details your involvement in his abduction, torture, and how you systematically destroyed his life after releasing him. Keyes leaned forward. He also provides compelling evidence that your wife's involvement in any murder plot was peripheral at best, manipulated by both Harlow and, more significantly, by you. Sounds like the desperate fabrications of a disturbed man. Dom replied evenly. A man with a documented history of fraud and manipulation of vulnerable women. That's what I thought initially, Keyes agreed. Until forensic analysis confirmed the journal's authenticity. The evidence suggests Harlow didn't commit suicide at all. He was murdered after recording his confession. By whom? The evidence points to someone employed by Veritas Construction at the time. Someone who followed Harlow to Montreal on your orders. Tobias. Dom had sent him to monitor Harlow, not to kill him. But Tobias had always been overzealous in his loyalty, sometimes acting beyond his explicit instructions. These are serious accusations, Detective, based on the questionable testimony of a known criminal who, by your own admission, was attempting to manipulate my wife into murdering me. Keyes nodded. Serious indeed, which is why I came to you directly before taking this to the current investigation team. The implied offer was clear, cooperation in exchange for discretion. What exactly are you suggesting? Dom asked carefully. Harlow's evidence casts significant doubt on your wife's conviction. It suggests you manufactured or manipulated key evidence, coerced a false confession from Harlow, and orchestrated a complex frame-up. Keyes tapped the file. If true, you're looking at multiple felony charges. If true, Dom emphasized, which it isn't. Audrey McAllister was convicted in a court of law based on substantial evidence. Her appeals were denied. The fact that her co-conspirator attempted to absolve her posthumously means nothing. Ordinarily, I'd agree. But there's more. Keyes pulled out a second file. We've also recovered communications between you and your sister Renata, documenting your plan to trick Audrey into providing a false confession. Dom's mind raced. Renata had been careful. They both had. Any communications had been verbal, never written. Impossible. Renata kept receipts, Dominic. When she became a judge 2 years ago, she must have gotten nervous about past indiscretions. Created an insurance policy by documenting everything. Judge Renata Veritas. His sister had achieved her lifelong ambition, ascending to the federal bench, a position that required impeccable ethics and unimpeachable judgment. My sister would never betray family, Dom stated with absolute certainty. Not willingly, Keyes acknowledged. But her clerk found the documentation while researching a similar case. Duty-bound, he reported it. Renata is now under investigation herself. Her judicial appointment in jeopardy. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't about justice for Audrey. This was leverage, a threat to Dom's sister unless he cooperated. What do you want, Keyes? The truth. A full statement acknowledging you manipulated evidence against your wife. That her participation in any conspiracy was minimal, coerced by Harlow, and that you exploited the situation to destroy her. And if I refuse, then the case proceeds officially. Your sister loses her judgeship. You face multiple charges. And Liam learns that his father systematically destroyed his mother for a revenge that far exceeded any crime she committed. Liam, there it was, the true leverage. Dom had built his entire life around protecting his son, preserving their relationship. The thought of Liam discovering the full truth was intolerable. I need time to consider this. 24 hours, Keyes stated, rising. I'm doing you a courtesy because of our history. Don't mistake it for weakness." After Keyes departed, Dom sat motionless, calculating options and consequences. The detective was clearly operating outside official channels, possibly seeking a significant payment to suppress the evidence. But even if Dom paid, the threat would remain. More concerning was the mention of Renata's documentation. If such evidence truly existed, it represented a vulnerability Dom couldn't eliminate through his usual methods. That evening, Dom called his sister. "We need to meet. Tonight. It's urgent." Renata agreed immediately, hearing the tension in his voice. They met at Dom's boat, docked on the Columbia River, a location free from potential surveillance. As they cruised into the darkness, Dom explained Keyes' visit and allegations. "Is it true?" he asked finally. "Did you document our arrangement regarding Audrey?" Renata's silence was answer enough. "What?" Dom demanded. "After everything we did to protect each other, why create evidence that could destroy us both?" "Insurance," she admitted. "When the judicial nomination came through, I realized how vulnerable I was. If anyone ever connected me to Audrey's case, questioned my role. So you protected yourself at my expense." "I protected us both," Renata countered. "The documentation is encrypted, stored where no one could access it. Keyes is bluffing." "Then how did he know about it?" Renata's confidence faltered. "I don't know. Maybe someone in my office discovered references to it. But the actual evidence remained secure." Dom studied his sister, the one person besides Tobias who knew the full extent of his actions against Audrey and Harlow. The one person he had trusted completely. "If Keyes is bluffing about your documentation, what about Harlow's journal?" "Likely also a bluff," Renata reasoned. "Or possibly real, but legally problematic. A posthumous statement from a co-conspirator wouldn't hold up without corroboration." Dom considered this analysis. "So we call his bluff." "Exactly. Deny everything. Demand proof. Counter-threaten with harassment charges." The strategy was sound, aligned with Dom's natural instincts. Yet something had shifted, a fracture in the foundation of certainty that had carried him through the years since Audrey's betrayal. And if he's not bluffing, if this reaches Liam? Renata's expression softened. "We'd manage it. Present it as protecting him from an unstable mother and her manipulative lover. Liam's old enough to understand complex motivations." But Dom wasn't concerned about justifying his actions to a 14-year-old. He was concerned about preserving Liam's fundamental trust, the belief that his father, however ruthless in business, operated from a moral core when it came to family. "I need to know exactly what documentation exists," Dom insisted. "Tonight." They returned to shore, proceeding to Renata's home, where she accessed a secured digital vault containing the insurance she'd created. Recordings of conversations where Dom outlined his plan to frame Audrey, emails discussing the fabrication of evidence, even photographs of items before they were planted in Harlow's gallery. "Delete it," Dom ordered. "All of it. Now." "Dom, be reasonable. Without this protection, it's not protection, it's a liability. Delete it, or I'll consider you as much a threat as Keyes." The implications hung heavy between them. Renata had witnessed her brother's capacity for ruthlessness firsthand, had helped engineer it against Audrey. "You wouldn't," she whispered, uncertainty in her voice. "Family protects family," Dom responded coldly. "Until they don't." Under his supervision, Renata deleted every file, every recording, every document connecting them to Audrey's case. Whether copies existed elsewhere remained unknown, a risk Dom would address separately. The next morning, Dom contacted Keyes, agreeing to meet at the detective's home rather than in any official capacity. The location confirmed Dom's suspicion. This was a personal operation, not departmental. "Have you considered my proposal?" Keyes asked, pouring coffee in his modest kitchen. "I have an alternative," Dom replied. "Retirement is expensive. Law enforcement pensions inadequate. Perhaps financial considerations would resolve whatever concerns you have about old cases." Keyes didn't even blink. "You're offering a bribe." "I'm offering compensation for your discretion regarding unfounded allegations that could damage my family unnecessarily." "Including your sister, the judge?" "Including my son," Who doesn't deserve to have his mother's tragedy exploited? Keyes sipped his coffee contemplatively. $3 million. Transferred to accounts I designate. In exchange, Harlow's evidence and any documentation regarding your sister disappear permanently. The figure was precise, matching exactly the life insurance policy Audrey had supposedly coveted. Dom wondered if Keyes had orchestrated this symmetry intentionally as commentary. $2 million, Dom countered automatically. Half now, half when I confirm all materials are destroyed. Done. Keyes extended his hand. I always knew you were the type to resolve problems practically, Dominic. As they shook on their arrangement, Dom felt no relief, only calculated determination. The payment would proceed, but this vulnerability couldn't remain. Keyes represented an ongoing threat, one that required permanent resolution. Over the next week, Dom methodically arranged the first payment while simultaneously activating resources he hadn't used since Audrey's case. Surveillance on Keyes revealed the detective was operating alone, motivated by financial concerns following costly medical treatments for his wife. The transaction completed, Dom received confirmation that Harlow's journal and digital files had been destroyed. Whether copies existed remained unknown, another risk to mitigate. The solution crystallized with cold clarity. Keyes would join Harlow and Audrey, another casualty of crossing Dominic Veritas. A convenient accident, a robbery gone wrong. The specifics could be determined by those Dom employed for such scenarios. Yet as Dom prepared to issue the final order, an unexpected interruption occurred. Liam knocked on his office door, holding a laptop. Dad, do you have a minute? I need help with something. Dom closed his secure messaging app. Of course, son. What is it? It's this history project. We're researching our family backgrounds, and I was hoping you could fill in some gaps about Mom. Dom maintained his composure despite the jolt of adrenaline. What sort of gaps? Basic stuff. Her childhood, how you met, why she. Liam hesitated. Why she had mental health issues. My teacher says understanding family medical history is important. Dom gestured for Liam to sit. What prompted this specific project? Just curriculum, Liam shrugged. But also, I've been having these dreams about Mom lately, like she's trying to tell me something. He looked up, suddenly vulnerable. Do you think that's weird? The question pierced Dom's carefully constructed defenses, not because of any supernatural implication, but because it revealed Liam's ongoing need to understand, to connect with the mother Dom had systematically erased. Dreams are how we process unresolved emotions, Dom explained carefully. It's natural to wonder about her. The thing is, Liam continued, I looked her up online. There wasn't much, but I found articles about her arrest. They said she tried to have you killed. His voice broke slightly. Is that true? The moment Dom had anticipated and dreaded for years had arrived. His son, now seeking truth independently, discovering fragments of a story Dom had carefully controlled. It's complicated, Liam. Your mother became involved with a manipulative man who encouraged her worst impulses. She made terrible choices. But did she really try to kill you? Liam pressed. Dom faced a crucial decision point. Continue the narrative he'd maintained for years, or offer a more nuanced truth that might preserve Liam's trust when he inevitably discovered more. There was evidence suggesting she and this man, Harlow, discussed harming me, Dom acknowledged. Whether she would have gone through with it, I'll never know for certain. And she went to prison, and then killed herself there. Liam's eyes brimmed with tears. Why didn't you tell me the whole truth? I wanted to protect you from knowledge that would only cause pain. But it's my history too, Liam insisted. I deserve to know. The accusation struck with unexpected force. In his determination to control the narrative, to punish Audrey completely, Dom had denied his son agency in understanding his own origin story. You're right, Dom conceded, the words unfamiliar on his tongue. I should have been more forthcoming as you grew older. Liam studied his father, searching for something beyond the admission. There's more, isn't there? Things you're still not telling me. The perceptiveness was distinctly Dom's own. The ability to sense concealed information, to recognize when someone was calculating rather than communicating. In that moment, Dom saw the potential future with devastating clarity. Liam continuing to investigate independently, discovering inconsistencies, perhaps eventually uncovering the truth of Dom's elaborate revenge. The complete loss of trust that would follow would destroy what Dom valued above all else, his relationship with his son. Simultaneously, his phone vibrated with a message from Tobias. Keys operation ready. Awaiting final authorization. Two paths diverge before him. Continue the pattern of ruthless elimination of threats, maintaining absolute control through whatever means necessary. Or break the cycle. Accept vulnerability. Preserve what mattered most through truth rather than manipulation. There is more, Dom acknowledged, making his choice. And you're old enough now to understand it. For the next hour, Dom shared a carefully edited version of events, admitting the affair between Audrey and Harlow, their discussions about harming him, but framing his own actions as standard legal procedures rather than elaborate revenge. He acknowledged using his resources to ensure the strongest possible case against them, but omitted the manufactured evidence and psychological warfare. Your mother made terrible choices, Dom concluded, but she loved you. That was never in question. Liam absorbed this information silently, processing its implications. Did you ever forgive her? The question struck at the core of Dom's character, his fundamental belief that betrayal merited destruction rather than redemption. No, he answered honestly. I didn't. Could you have? Liam pressed. If she had lived, gotten help, changed? Dom considered this hypothetical with genuine reflection. I don't know. Forgiveness isn't natural to me. It isn't weakness, Liam said with unexpected wisdom. My counselor says forgiveness is about freeing yourself, not excusing others. The insight from his teenage son's therapy sessions created an uncomfortable resonance. Had Dom truly freed himself through his perfect revenge? Or had he remained chained to Audrey and Harlow by his determination to orchestrate their destruction long after they posed any genuine threat? After Liam left for bed, Dom returned to the pending authorization for keys. The detective represented a genuine threat to Dom's freedom, to Renata's career, to Liam's understanding of his father. Yet eliminating him would perpetuate the cycle, maintain the pattern that had defined Dom's response to betrayal. A pattern Liam had unknowingly challenged with his simple question about forgiveness. Dom made his decision. Operation canceled. Alternative strategy in progress. The next day, Dom met with his attorneys to draft a different approach. Legal pressure on Keys through documented evidence of extortion, combined with financial incentives for permanent silence that didn't involve murdering a former detective. It wasn't forgiveness. Dominic Veritas remained fundamentally unforgiving toward those who betrayed him. But it was a calculated compromise, accepting control vulnerability to preserve what mattered most. As Christmas approached, Dom found himself reflecting on the events that had begun with frayed Christmas lights 7 years earlier. The complete destruction of Audrey and Harlow had been his finest strategic achievement, a perfect revenge executed with precision and patience. Yet it had come with costs beyond his calculations. The constant vigilance required to maintain the narrative. The corruption of his relationship with Renata. The potential future estrangement from Liam if the full truth ever emerged. On Christmas Eve, Dom and Liam continued their tradition of driving through decorated neighborhoods. As they admired the elaborate displays, Liam turned to his father. Can we visit Mom's grave tomorrow? I've never been. The request represented another crossroads. Continue controlling Liam's connection to his mother or allow him to develop his own relationship with her memory. If that's what you want, Dom agreed, choosing the latter path. The following morning, after presents and breakfast, they drove to the small cemetery where Audrey had been buried in a simple service attended only by her brother and parents. Dom had ensured Liam's absence, maintaining the narrative of Audrey's mental health facility residency until well after her death. Standing before the modest headstone, Liam placed flowers he had selected himself. Do you think she can hear us? I'm not the right person to ask about the afterlife, Dom replied honestly. I think she can, Liam decided, and I think she'd want us both to be happy. The sentiment was childlike in its simplicity, yet profound in its implication. Audrey, whatever her flaws and sins, had ultimately wanted connection with her son, a connection Dom had severed completely as part of his revenge. As they returned home, Dom recognized something had fundamentally shifted. Not forgiveness for Audrey's betrayal, that remained beyond his capacity, but a willingness to allow Liam his own relationship with his mother's memory, unfiltered through Dom's narrative of complete villainy. It wasn't weakness. It was strategic adaptation to protect what mattered most. That evening, as they completed decorating their tree, the tradition that had revealed Audrey's betrayal years before, Dom watched his son hang the star at the top. "Perfect," Dom declared, admiring their work. "Dad," Liam asked, his expression serious beyond his years, "are you happy?" The question caught Dom off guard with its directness. Had his perfect revenge, his complete victory, brought happiness? Or had it simply eliminated threats while creating new vulnerabilities? "I have everything that matters," Dom answered carefully. "A successful business, a remarkable son, security. That's not the same as happiness," Liam observed with unsettling perception. Dom considered this distinction. Perhaps not, but it's enough. As Christmas night deepened around them, Dominic Veritas acknowledged the true price of his victory, the capacity for simple happiness his revenge had consumed, the ability to trust completely, to connect without calculation, to forgive rather than destroy. He remained unrepentant about Audrey and Harlow's fates. They had earned their destruction through their betrayal. But as he watched his son, unburdened by the weight of perpetual vengeance, Dom recognized that true victory might require more than perfect revenge. It might require knowing when enough was enough, when destruction could be replaced by moving forward, when the past could be acknowledged but not permitted to control the future. That wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't weakness. It was the final, most difficult strategic decision of Dominic Veritas's life, choosing his son's future over Audrey's past. And in that choice lay the only redemption he would ever need. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Foundation. Jared Atkinson had built his life like he built houses, with precision, dedication, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. At 38, he owned the most successful construction company in Cedar Falls, employing over 200 people and completing projects across 3 states. His calloused hands told the story of a man who started from nothing, working his way up from a day laborer to a millionaire contractor. 15 years ago, he'd married Angela Moody, the beautiful daughter of the town's former mayor. Angela, now 35, had been the catch of Cedar Falls, blonde, ambitious, and from a family with old money that had long since dried up. The Moody name still carried weight, but the bank accounts had been empty for a generation. Their marriage had seemed perfect to outsiders. Angela played the role of the successful businessman's wife flawlessly, organizing charity events and maintaining their sprawling estate on Maple Ridge. But Jared noticed the changes over the years, the coldness that crept into her touch, the way she'd disappear for hours without explanation, the expensive purchases that didn't match any occasion. Their son, Trevor Atkinson, was 14 and the light of Jared's life. The boy had inherited his father's work ethic and his mother's intelligence, excelling in both academics and sports. Jared coached Trevor's baseball team, and they spent every weekend working on projects in the garage, a tradition that Angela had long since stopped participating in. The pregnancy had been a surprise. After 14 years of marriage and multiple miscarriages, they'd assumed Trevor would be their only child. Angela's announcement 6 months ago had been met with mixed emotions. Jared was thrilled, while Angela seemed distant and anxious. Dr. Edmund Harrington had been the Atkinson family physician for over a decade. A man in his 60s with graying temples and kind eyes. He delivered several babies in Cedar Falls and was known for his gentle bedside manner. He'd been monitoring Angela's pregnancy closely, given her history and age. As Jared sat in the waiting room of Harrington's practice, he reflected on how different this pregnancy felt from when Angela carried Trevor. She'd been glowing then, excited about every milestone. This time, she seemed burdened, often staring off into space with a worried expression she claimed was just hormonal anxiety. Chuck Lake, Jared's business partner and best friend since high school, had noticed the changes too. Chuck managed the financial side of Atkinson Construction while Jared handled operations. He'd mentioned seeing Angela around town at odd hours, always checking her phone with a secretive smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Something's not right with her, man," Chuck had said just last week over their usual Friday beer. Sarah saw her at the coffee shop on Main Street, deep in conversation with some guy she didn't recognize. When Sarah waved, Angela practically jumped out of her skin. Jared had dismissed it then, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Angela's behavior had become increasingly erratic, coming home late from shopping trips with no bags, taking phone calls in private, and showing little interest in preparing for the baby's arrival. The morning of the appointment, Angela had been unusually quiet. She'd barely touched her breakfast and seemed nervous, constantly checking her reflection in every mirror they passed. When Jared suggested they grab lunch after the appointment to celebrate their healthy baby, she'd simply nodded without enthusiasm. Now, as he waited for her to emerge from the examination room, Jared tried to push away the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. He'd built his success on trusting his instincts, and every instinct was screaming that his perfectly constructed life was about to crumble. Chapter 2. The Web of Deception. Dr. Harrington's examination room felt smaller than usual as Angela lay on the table, her shirt pulled up to expose her rounded belly. The gel felt cold against her skin, but not as cold as the fear running through her veins. She'd been dreading this appointment for weeks, knowing that modern ultrasound technology would reveal what she'd been desperately trying to hide. The affair had started innocently enough 8 months ago. Marcos Jennings was a smooth-talking real estate developer from the state capital, 32 years old with dark hair and a charming smile that had caught Angela's attention at a charity fundraiser. Unlike Jared, who was always covered in construction dust and talked about building codes and job sites, Marcos wore expensive suits and spoke of international investments and luxury developments. Angela had felt trapped in Cedar Falls for years. While Jared was content building his empire in their small town, she'd always dreamed of something bigger: city life, sophisticated social circles, and the kind of wealth that bought respect rather than earned it through calloused hands and honest work. Marcos had pursued her relentlessly after that first meeting. Expensive flowers arrived at the house when Jared was at work. Text messages filled with poetry and promises of a life beyond the confines of small-town America. He'd rented a luxury suite at the Grandview Hotel, 40 minutes outside town, where they'd meet twice a week for passionate encounters that made Angela feel alive in ways she'd forgotten. The pregnancy had been an accident, a moment of carelessness when passion overrode common sense. By the time Angela realized what had happened, it was too late for the quiet solution she'd initially considered. The timeline was wrong, dangerously wrong. She'd been with Marcos 3 weeks before the last time she'd been intimate with Jared. Dr. Harrington moved the ultrasound wand across her belly, his expression becoming increasingly troubled as he studied the monitor. Angela couldn't see the screen from her position, but she watched his face carefully, noting the way his eyebrows furrowed and his lips pressed into a thin line. "Is everything all right?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The doctor didn't answer immediately. He was calculating dates in his head, cross-referencing the baby's development with the conception timeline Angela had provided months ago. The measurements were off, significantly off. This baby was conceived at least 3 weeks earlier than Angela had claimed. In his 40 years of practice, Dr. Harrington had seen this situation before. The awkward silences, the nervous wives, the trusting husbands sitting in waiting rooms with excited smiles. But he'd never had to deal with a case involving people he'd known for decades, people whose lives would be shattered by what the ultrasound revealed. Meanwhile, Jared sat in the waiting room, scrolling through emails from job sites. Atkinson Construction was in the middle of their biggest project yet, a luxury hotel complex that would establish them as the premier builders in the region. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was building the very type of establishment where his wife had been betraying him. Chuck had texted him earlier about a potential investor for their next big project, someone named Marcos Jennings who'd been asking questions about their company. Jared made a mental note to look into it later, always interested in expanding their business relationships. Trevor was at school, probably thinking about the baby sister or brother he'd been eagerly anticipating. He'd already started converting the spare room into a nursery, painting cartoon characters on the walls with the same attention to detail he applied to everything else. Jared smiled, thinking about his son's excitement, unaware that the boy's world was about to be shattered along with his own. Dr. Harrington finally set down the ultrasound wand and turned to Angela with grave eyes. "Mrs. Atkinson, we need to discuss the timeline of this pregnancy. Based on the baby's development, conception occurred approximately 26 weeks ago, not 23 as we originally calculated." Angela's face went pale. 3 weeks. The difference that would destroy everything she'd built over 15 years of marriage. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. "I need to speak with your husband," Dr. Harrington said quietly. "This is a conversation that affects both of you, and he deserves to know the truth." As the doctor left to get Jared, Angela closed her eyes and tried to prepare for the end of the world as she knew it. Somewhere across town, Marcos Jennings was probably closing another real estate deal, oblivious to the fact that his secret was about to destroy multiple lives. And in the waiting room, the man who'd loved and trusted her for 15 years was about to learn that his perfect life had been built on a foundation of lies. Chapter 3: The Revelation. Dr. Harrington's hands were trembling slightly as he approached the waiting room. In 4 decades of medical practice, he'd delivered difficult news countless times, but never had the stakes felt so personal. The Atkinson family had been patient since Trevor was born, and Jared had built the addition to his clinic just 5 years ago. This wasn't just about medical ethics. It was about watching a good man's world collapse. "Mr. Atkinson, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Dr. Harrington's voice was carefully controlled, but Jared immediately noticed the tension. They walked to his office, leaving Angela alone in the examination room. Dr. Harrington closed the door and gestured for Jared to sit, but remained standing himself, pacing slightly as he gathered his thoughts. "Jared, what I'm about to tell you will be difficult to hear, but you need to know the truth." He paused, looking at the man he'd known for years. "The ultrasound shows that the baby's development is inconsistent with the timeline your wife provided. Based on the measurements, conception occurred approximately 26 weeks ago, not 23. Jared's brow furrowed as he processed the information. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means the child couldn't have been conceived during the time frame when you and Angela were together. According to your wife's medical history and our previous discussions, you were away on that construction project in Denver during the conception window." The color drained from Jared's face as the implications hit him like a sledgehammer. The Denver project. He'd been there for 3 weeks in January, the biggest contract Atkinson Construction had ever landed. He'd called Angela every night, missing her terribly, looking forward to coming home to celebrate their success. "Are you absolutely certain?" Jared's voice was barely above a whisper. Dr. Harrington nodded gravely. "I've triple-checked the measurements. There's no doubt about the timing." Jared stood up slowly, his mind racing through the past 6 months. Angela's strange behavior, the secretive phone calls, the distance between them. It all made perfect sense now. He thought about Trevor, probably sitting in algebra class, excited about becoming a big brother to a child that wasn't even his sibling. "What do I do now?" Jared asked, more to himself than to the doctor. "That's not for me to say," Dr. Harrington replied. "But Jared, you're a good man. You deserve better than this. Whatever you decide to do, you need to protect yourself and Trevor." As they walked back toward the examination room, Dr. Harrington's advice echoed in Jared's ears. "Leave this hospital now and file for divorce." The words had come out before he could stop them, spoken from the heart of a man who'd watched too many good people suffer from betrayal. But Jared Atkinson was not a man who made rash decisions. As they approached the door, he was already calculating, planning. Angela was still lying on the examination table, staring at the ceiling with tears in her eyes. She knew. She'd known all along. "Show me," Jared said to Dr. Harrington. "Show me the ultrasound." Dr. Harrington hesitated, but turned the monitor toward Jared. There on the screen was undeniable proof, development measurements that corresponded to a conception date that made Angela's betrayal crystal clear. The baby was healthy and growing normally, but it wasn't his. Angela finally looked at him, her eyes filled with tears and desperation. "Jared, I can explain." "No," he said quietly, his voice carrying a coldness she'd never heard before. "You can't." He studied the ultrasound for another moment, memorizing every detail. Then he looked at his wife, the woman he'd loved and trusted for 15 years, the mother of his son, the person who'd just destroyed everything he believed about his life. "We're going home," Jared said, his voice eerily calm. "We're going to have a conversation, and then you're going to tell me exactly who he is." Angela's face went white. "Jared, please." "Dr. Harrington," Jared interrupted, turning to the older man. "Thank you for telling me the truth. Send me copies of everything, the ultrasound, the measurements, the timeline. Everything." As they left the hospital, Angela tried repeatedly to speak, but Jared remained silent. His mind was no longer focused on the betrayal itself. He'd already processed and accepted that reality. Instead, he was thinking about the future, about Trevor's stability, about his business, about the fact that somewhere in Cedar Falls, a man was walking around thinking he'd gotten away with destroying the Atkinson family. Jared Atkinson had built an empire through careful planning and methodical execution. He learned early in life that the key to success wasn't just working hard, it was working smart. As they drove home in silence, Angela crying softly in the passenger seat, Jared was already formulating a plan that would ensure justice was served in ways the legal system never could. The man who'd spent 15 years building a life was about to spend however long it took tearing down the lives of those who betrayed him. And unlike his construction projects, this demolition would be personal, permanent, and absolutely devastating. Chapter 4. The Hunter's Patience. That evening, Jared sat in his home office, a room lined with awards and photographs documenting 15 years of business success and family memories that now felt like elaborate lies. Angela had retreated to their bedroom, claiming a headache, while Trevor worked on homework in his room, blissfully unaware that his world had shifted off its axis. Jared opened his laptop and began what he did best, methodical research and planning. His first search was for Marcos Jennings, and it didn't take long to find information about Cedar Falls' newest predator. Jennings Development Group had a sleek website showcasing luxury properties across the state, with Marcos featured prominently as the charismatic CEO who brings dreams to life through visionary real estate development. The man was handsome in a polished way that Jared found immediately repulsive. All white teeth and expensive suits, the kind of person who'd never worked an honest day in his life. Marcos's LinkedIn profile showed him attending the same charity fundraiser where he'd likely met Angela, and his social media presence revealed a man who thrived on attention and luxury. Digging deeper, Jared discovered that Marcos was married to a woman named Samantha Jennings, a prominent attorney in the state capitol. They had twin daughters, aged 10, and live in a $1 million home in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. The irony wasn't lost on Jared. This man was destroying multiple families simultaneously. Over the next week, Jared maintained his normal routine while secretly gathering intelligence. He told Chuck that Angela was having pregnancy complications that required rest, which explained her absence from social events and his own distracted demeanor. Chuck, ever loyal, handled extra responsibilities without question. Jared hired a private investigator named Paul Hines, a former police detective who specialized in infidelity cases. Paul was discreet and thorough, exactly what Jared needed. Within 3 days, Paul had documented Angela and Marcos's weekly meetings at the Grandview Hotel, complete with photographs and timestamps that painted a picture of calculated deception. The evidence was damning. Angela had been using money from their joint account to pay for the hotel room. She told Jared she was shopping or visiting her sister Muriel in the next town over, but instead was 40 minutes away in a luxury suite, playing house with a man who was lying to his own family just as thoroughly. But Jared wanted more than just evidence of the affair. He wanted to understand the full scope of the betrayal and ensure his response would be comprehensive and permanent. Through Paul's investigation, he learned that Marcos had been planning to leave his wife and move Angela to the state capital, where they'd start fresh with their child and Angela's settlement from the divorce. The plan revealed Angela's complete betrayal. She hadn't just been unfaithful, she'd been planning to destroy their family and take half of everything Jared had built to fund her new life with another man's child. The depth of the deception was staggering. Trevor remained oblivious, excitedly planning for his new sibling and working on the nursery. Watching his son's innocent enthusiasm was torture for Jared, but it also strengthened his resolve. Trevor deserved better than a mother who could lie so thoroughly and a stepfather who was equally dishonest. During this week of investigation, Angela grew increasingly nervous. She could sense Jared's emotional distance, but seemed to believe she could maintain the charade. She even had the audacity to ask him about paint color for the nursery, playing the role of devoted wife while continuing to meet Marcos twice weekly. Jared's respect for his wife evaporated completely as he watched her perform this elaborate deception. The woman he'd loved was revealed to be a skilled manipulator who could look him in the eyes and lie without hesitation. It was a side of Angela he'd never seen, and it disgusted him more than the affair itself. On Friday evening, exactly 1 week after the ultrasound revelation, Jared made his decision. He would not confront Angela yet. That would only force her and Marcos to become more careful or flee. Instead, he would execute a plan that would expose their betrayal publicly while ensuring they face consequences far beyond a simple divorce settlement. As he sat in his office, reviewing Paul's latest report, Jared felt something he hadn't experienced since building his first house: the satisfaction of a perfectly planned project about to come to fruition. Angela and Marcos had made the mistake of underestimating a man who'd built an empire through patience, intelligence, and unwavering determination. They were about to learn that Jared Atkinson was not the simple small-town contractor they'd assumed he was. He was a man with resources, connections, and most importantly, the ruthless focus to ensure that those who betrayed him would regret it for the rest of their lives. The hunting season was about to begin, and Jared Atkinson had never missed his target. Chapter 5: The Trap. 2 weeks after the ultrasound revelation, Jared was ready to spring his trap. He'd spent every moment planning meticulously, using the same attention to detail that had made Atkinson Construction the most successful building company in the region. But this time, instead of creating something, he was preparing to systematically destroy the lives of those who betrayed him. The key to Jared's plan was information Paul Hines had uncovered about Marcos's business practices. Jennings Development Group was heavily leveraged, with several projects dependent on continued investor confidence. More importantly, Marcos had been cutting corners on environmental regulations and safety standards, violations that could result in criminal charges if properly documented and reported. Jared's first move was strategic and seemingly innocent. He arranged a business meeting with Marcos under the pretense of discussing a potential partnership. Atkinson Construction's reputation in the region made them an attractive partner for any developer, and Marcos eagerly agreed to meet. They met at the Cedar Falls Country Club, a place where Jared held considerable influence as a founding member. Marcos arrived in his BMW, dressed in an expensive suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. The man exuded arrogance, clearly believing he was about to close a lucrative deal with a simple small-town contractor. "Jared, I've heard incredible things about your company," Marcos said, extending his hand with a practiced smile. "I think we could do great things together." Jared shook his hand, noting the soft palm that had never held a hammer or earned an honest callus. "I'm always interested in working with ambitious developers. Tell me about your current projects." Over lunch, Marcos enthusiastically described his various developments, inadvertently revealing details about cost-cutting measures and regulatory shortcuts that Jared mentally cataloged. The man was so confident in his own cleverness that he essentially confessed to numerous violations without realizing it. I found that sometimes you have to be creative with regulations, Marcos said with a conspiratorial wink. Environmental impact studies can be interpreted flexibly if you know the right people. Jared nodded thoughtfully, secretly recording the conversation on his phone. That's very interesting. I'd love to see some of your sites firsthand. They arranged for Jared to visit 3 of Marcos's current projects over the following week. What Marcos didn't know was that Jared was documenting everything: safety violations, environmental damage, co-violations, and evidence of bribery. Each site visit provided more ammunition for the eventual legal destruction of Jennings' development group. Meanwhile, Angela's behavior became increasingly erratic. She'd missed her appointment with Dr. Harrington the previous week, claiming she wasn't feeling well. In reality, she was panicking about the timeline discrepancy and had been researching ways to explain it away. She'd even considered claiming the baby was premature, but the ultrasound measurements made that impossible. Her affair with Marcos continued, but their meetings were now filled with anxiety rather than passion. Angela sensed that Jared knew something, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly what had changed. Marcos dismissed her concerns, confident that his charm and her husband's trusting nature would protect them. During this time, Jared also began securing his assets. Working with his attorney, Jeffrey Dunn, he restructured Atkinson Construction to protect the company from any potential divorce settlement. Jeffrey was an old friend who'd helped Jared build his business empire, and he asked no questions when Jared requested aggressive asset protection strategies. Jared, if you're concerned about liability issues, we can create a more complex corporate structure, Jeffrey suggested during one of their meetings. Do it, Jared replied. I want everything protected. The house, the business, Trevor's college fund, everything. Trevor remained a bright spot in Jared's increasingly dark world. The boy continued working on a nursery, painting cartoon characters with the same precision his father applied to construction projects. Watching his son's innocent excitement was both heartbreaking and motivating for Jared. Trevor deserved protection from the chaos that was about to erupt. On Thursday evening, Paul Hines delivered the final piece of evidence Jared needed. Through careful surveillance and strategic information gathering, Paul had discovered that Marcos was planning to leave his wife Samantha within the next month. The plan was for Angela to file for divorce immediately after, claiming irreconcilable differences, and then move to the state capital with the baby once it was born. They've got it all figured out, Paul reported. Marcos has already put a deposit on a penthouse apartment downtown. Angela's been researching divorce attorneys who specialize in high-asset cases. They think they're going to walk away with half of everything you've built. Jared smiled coldly as he reviewed the surveillance photos showing Angela and Marcos at the Grandview Hotel earlier that week. They're about to learn that some plans don't survive contact with reality. That night, as Angela slept beside him, Jared finalized his strategy. He would reveal his knowledge of the affair in a way that would maximize damage to both betrayers while protecting himself and Trevor. The timing would be crucial. He needed to coordinate multiple moving parts to ensure neither Angela nor Marcos could escape the consequences of their actions. Phase 1 had been intelligence gathering. Phase 2 had been evidence collection and asset protection. Phase 3, which would begin the following Monday, was total war. And Jared Atkinson had never lost a war he'd chosen to fight. Chapter 6, The Reckoning. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth for October, as if the universe itself was conspiring to make this perfect day for destruction. Jared woke before dawn, as he had every morning for the past 3 weeks, but today felt different. Today, the planning phase ended and the execution phase began. At 7 a.m., while Angela was still sleeping and Trevor was getting ready for school, Jared made his first call. He contacted the State Environmental Protection Agency and reported the violations he'd documented at Marcos's construction sites. The evidence was comprehensive: photographs, recorded conversations, and documentation of illegal dumping and safety violations that put both workers and the public at risk. His second call was to the Internal Revenue Service. Marcos had been bragging about tax strategies that crossed the line into fraud, and Jared had carefully documented every detail. The IRS took such reports seriously, especially when accompanied by substantial evidence. The third call was to Samantha Jennings, Marcos's unsuspecting wife. Jared had debated this decision, but ultimately decided she deserved to know the truth about her husband's double life. "Mrs. Jennings, my name is Jared Atkinson. I have information about your husband that you need to know. Could we meet for coffee this morning?" Samantha's voice was cautious but curious. "I'm not sure what this is about, Mr. Atkinson. Your husband is having an affair with my wife, and they're planning to leave their families. I have extensive documentation, and I thought you should see it before making any decisions about your future." The silence on the other end lasted nearly 30 seconds before Samantha spoke again. "What kind of documentation?" They arranged to meet at a coffee shop near Samantha's law office. Jared brought copies of everything: surveillance photos, hotel receipts, text messages that Paul had obtained through various means, and the ultrasound that proved Angela was carrying Marcos' child. Samantha Jennings was an impressive woman, intelligent, composed, and clearly devastated by the evidence, but determined to handle the situation professionally. As a family law attorney, she understood the implications immediately. "This is comprehensive," she said, reviewing the documents. "You've essentially built an airtight case against both of them." "That was the intention," Jared replied. "Your husband has been planning to leave you for my wife. They think they're going to take half of everything I've built to fund their new life together." Samantha's eyes hardened. "Not if I file first. Marcos doesn't know that I've been documenting his suspicious behavior for months, combined with your evidence." They spent the next hour coordinating their strategies. Samantha would file for divorce that afternoon, seeking full custody of their daughters and requesting forensic accounting of all Marcos' business dealings. Her legal connections would ensure the process moved quickly and aggressively. Meanwhile, Angela was at Dr. Harrington's office for a rescheduled appointment she couldn't avoid any longer. The doctor had insisted on seeing her after she'd missed the previous week's visit. She sat nervously in the waiting room, unaware that her world was already beginning to collapse around her. At noon, Jared returned home to find Angela in the kitchen, preparing lunch with nervous energy. She looked up as he entered, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How was your morning?" she asked, her voice artificially bright. "Productive," Jared replied, setting his briefcase on the counter. "We need to talk." Something in his tone made Angela freeze. She'd been dreading this conversation for weeks, but had hoped she could maintain the charade until the baby was born and she could execute her escape plan with Marcos. "What about?" she asked, though she already knew. Jared opened his briefcase and removed a manila folder. He spread its contents across the kitchen table: surveillance photos, hotel receipts, ultrasound images, and documented evidence of Angela's affair. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Angela's face went white as she stared at the photographs of herself and Marcos at the Grandview Hotel. "Jared, I can explain." "No," he said quietly. "You can't, because there is no explanation that justifies what you've done to our family." He sat down across from her, his voice remaining calm and controlled. "I know about Marcos Jennings. I know about your weekly meetings at the Grandview Hotel. I know that the baby you're carrying is his, not mine. And I know about your plan to divorce me and move to the state capital with my money." Angela began crying, but Jared felt no sympathy. The woman sitting across from him was a stranger who'd systematically destroyed 15 years of marriage and trust. "I also know," he continued, "that you've been planning this for months. The hotel receipts go back to January, when I was in Denver closing the biggest deal of my career. While I was working 18-hour days to secure our future, you were planning to destroy it." "Jared, please," Angela sobbed. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," he replied. "But here's what you don't know. As of this morning, Marcos Jennings is facing federal environmental violations charges, IRS fraud investigations, and a divorce filing from his wife, who now has all the evidence of his affair. His business will be destroyed, his assets frozen, and his reputation ruined." Angela's crying stopped as the implications hit her. "What did you do?" I protected my family and ensured that the people who betrayed us faced appropriate consequences, Jared said. Marcos won't be taking care of you or your baby. He'll be lucky if he's not in federal prison. As if on cue, Angela's phone buzzed with a text message from Marcos. Emergency. Need to talk immediately. Everything's falling apart. Jared watched his wife read the message, seeing the exact moment when she realized that her carefully planned escape route had been completely eliminated. The man she betrayed her family for was about to become a liability rather than a salvation. Pack your things, Jared said, standing up. You have until Trevor gets home from school to leave this house. After that, all communication goes through attorneys. Angela looked up at him with desperate eyes. What about the baby? What about our family? This isn't our family anymore, Jared replied. And that isn't my child. You made your choices, Angela. Now you get to live with the consequences. As he walked toward his office to make another round of calls, Jared felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The planning was over. The truth was revealed, and justice was being served. Phase 3 had begun, and it was proceeding exactly as designed. Chapter 7. The Domino Effect. Within 24 hours of Jared's revelation, the carefully constructed lies that had held Angela and Marcos's affair together crumbled like a house built on a foundation of sand. The speed and thoroughness of the collapse exceeded even Jared's expectations, proving that dishonest people rarely limit their deception to just one area of their lives. Marcos Jennings received the first blow Tuesday morning when federal agents arrived at his office with search warrants related to the environmental violations Jared had reported. The agents seized computers, files, and financial records dating back 3 years. By noon, the story had broken in the state capital's business journal, with headlines reading, "Developer faces federal environmental charges." The second blow came that afternoon when Samantha Jennings filed for divorce, accompanied by a motion for emergency asset freezing based on evidence of marital infidelity and financial irregularities. Her filing included Jared's surveillance evidence and additional documentation she'd gathered independently, painting a picture of a man who'd systematically deceived both his family and his business partners. Angela, meanwhile, had spent Monday night at a hotel, calling Marcos repeatedly as she watched their perfect plan disintegrate. When she finally reached him Tuesday evening, the man who'd promised her a life of luxury and sophistication was barely holding himself together. "Everything's ruined," Marcos said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "The Fed seized everything. Samantha's frozen all our accounts. My investors are backing out. I don't know how this happened so fast." "Jared happened," Angela replied bitterly. "He knew everything. He's been planning this for weeks." "What do you mean he knew everything?" Angela explained the ultrasound revelation and Jared's methodical investigation. As she spoke, Marcos realized the scope of the trap that had been set for them. The simple contractor he'd dismissed as an easy mark had orchestrated their destruction with precision that would have impressed a military strategist. "We need to figure this out," Marcos said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe we can." "There is no we anymore," Angela interrupted. "You're about to lose everything, and I'm pregnant with your child. How exactly are you going to take care of us now?" The conversation ended with Marcos hanging up, leaving Angela alone in a hotel room, surrounded by the wreckage of her choices. The man she betrayed her family for had revealed himself to be exactly what Jared had always been, but in reverse. Where Jared was reliable, Marcos was weak. Where Jared was principled, Marcos was selfish. Where Jared fought for his family, Marcos abandoned his responsibilities at the first sign of trouble. Wednesday brought more devastating news for both betrayers. The IRS announced a full audit of Jennings Development Group, with potential criminal charges pending. 3 major investors pulled out of Marcos's projects, citing reputational concerns. His business lawyer informed him that the company would likely be forced into bankruptcy within 60 days. For Angela, the reality of her situation became increasingly clear. Her sister Muriel refused to let her stay at her house, disgusted by Angela's betrayal of Jared and Trevor. Her parents, the once proud Moody family, were mortified by the scandal and offered only cold disapproval rather than support. Chuck Lake, meanwhile, proved his loyalty to Jared by ensuring that word of Angela's affair spread through Cedar Falls' tight-knit business community with surgical precision. By Wednesday evening, everyone who mattered knew exactly what had happened and where the blame lay. Public opinion was overwhelmingly supportive of Jared and contemptuous of Angela's betrayal. Trevor handled the news with the same maturity he applied to everything else, though Jared could see the pain in his son's eyes. "Is Mom ever coming home?" the boy asked Wednesday night as they worked on a new project in the garage, building a bookshelf for Trevor's room to replace the nursery decorations he'd removed himself. "No," Jared replied honestly, "but we're going to be fine. We've always been a good team, and that's not going to change." "I'm sorry about the baby," Trevor said quietly. "I was really excited about being a big brother." Jared put down his tools and looked at his son, the one part of his marriage that had been genuine and valuable. "You're going to be a great big brother someday, when the time is right. This isn't about you, Trevor. You did nothing wrong." Thursday brought the final domino in Jared's carefully orchestrated campaign. Paul Hines delivered evidence that Marcos had been embezzling from his own company to fund his affair with Angela. The expensive hotel suite, the gifts, even Angela's shopping sprees had been paid for with money stolen from investors and business partners. The embezzlement evidence was the final nail in Marcos's professional coffin. Within hours of its delivery to federal investigators, warrants were issued for his arrest. He was picked up Thursday evening at his office, led away in handcuffs as local news cameras captured every moment of his humiliation. Angela watched the arrest on the local news from her hotel room, her hand resting on her growing belly as she realized the full scope of what her choices had cost. The man she betrayed her family for wasn't just unfaithful and weak. He was a criminal who'd used her as an unwitting accomplice in his schemes. Friday evening, exactly 1 week after Jared had confronted Angela with the evidence of her betrayal, he sat in his office reviewing the results of his campaign. Marcos Jennings was in federal custody, facing charges that would likely result in a decade in prison. His business was bankrupt, his assets seized, and his reputation destroyed beyond repair. Angela was alone, pregnant, and facing a divorce settlement that would leave her with minimal assets thanks to the prenuptial agreement she'd forgotten about and the adultery clause that voided most of her financial protections. Her family had disowned her, her friends had abandoned her, and the man she'd betrayed her family for was headed to prison. As Jared closed the files on his desk, he felt the satisfaction of a job completed successfully. The planning had been meticulous, the execution flawless, and the results comprehensive. The people who had betrayed him were facing consequences proportionate to their actions, while he and Trevor were free to rebuild their lives on a foundation of truth rather than lies. Phase 3 was complete. It was time to begin Phase 4, building something better from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Chapter 8, The New Foundation. 3 months had passed since the ultrasound revelation that changed everything, and Cedar Falls had settled into a new normal that reflected the consequences of choices made and justice served. Winter had arrived early, blanketing the town in snow that seemed to cleanse the air of the scandal that had dominated local conversations through the fall. Marcos Jennings was serving a 7-year federal sentence for embezzlement and environmental crimes. The prosecution had been swift and merciless, with the evidence Jared provided forming the backbone of a case that left no room for plea bargaining. The man who'd once strutted around in expensive suits now wore prison orange and had aged 10 years in 3 months. His twin daughters lived with their mother, who'd successfully claimed most of his remaining assets and moved them to a different state to escape the scandal. Angela had given birth to a daughter in December, a beautiful baby girl she'd named Cora. The birth had been difficult, both physically and emotionally, as she faced motherhood alone in a small apartment across town, supported only by welfare and the minimal alimony the court had awarded given her adultery. The once proud mayor's daughter now worked part-time at a grocery store, struggling to make ends meet while caring for an infant whose father would be in prison until she was school-aged. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in Cedar Falls that Angela, who dreamed of escaping to a life of luxury and sophistication, had instead found herself trapped in the kind of poverty she'd always looked down upon. Her family had slowly begun speaking to her again, but the relationships remained strained and conditional. The Moody name, once prestigious in Cedar Falls, was now associated with scandal and poor judgment. Jared, meanwhile, had thrived in ways that surprised even him. The divorce had been finalized in January, with Angela receiving far less than she'd expected thanks to the prenuptial agreement and the evidence of her infidelity. Atkinson Construction had landed 2 major contracts in the aftermath of the scandal, as clients appreciated Jared's integrity and the way he'd handled his personal crisis with dignity. Trevor had adjusted to their new life with remarkable resilience. The boy had initially struggled with anger toward his mother, but Jared had worked carefully to help his son process the betrayal without letting it poison his view of all relationships. They'd grown even closer, spending evenings working on projects and weekends exploring hiking trails around Cedar Falls. "Dad," Trevor said one Saturday morning as they worked on rebuilding the deck behind their house, "do you think you'll ever get married again?" Jared paused his hammering and considered the question. At 40, he felt older and wiser, but not bitter. The betrayal had taught him the value of careful judgment, but it hadn't destroyed his capacity for trust. It had simply made him more selective about who earned it. "Maybe someday," he replied honestly, "but not until you and I have finished building our new life together. We're a pretty good team as we are." Chuck Lake had become an even closer friend through the crisis, his loyalty during the darkest period cementing a bond that went beyond business partnership. His wife Sarah had taken on something of a protective role toward Trevor, ensuring the boy felt supported by their broader community even as his nuclear family had been shattered. The reconstruction of Jared's personal life paralleled his approach to construction projects, methodical, patient, and built to last. He joined the school board, becoming an advocate for programs that supported children from broken homes. He'd started a scholarship fund in Trevor's name, helping local students afford trade school or college. Dr. Harrington had retired in December, selling his practice to a younger physician but remaining in Cedar Falls. He occasionally joined Jared for coffee, and their conversations often touched on the ethical challenges of truth-telling and the unexpected ways that honesty could lead to justice. "You did the right thing," the old doctor had said during one of their conversations. "It took courage to tell you the truth, but it would have been worse for everyone if I'd stayed silent." Including Angela, Jared had replied. Living a lie was destroying her, even if she couldn't see it. The truth gave her a chance to face reality and maybe become a better person. By spring, Angela had indeed begun showing signs of personal growth, though it came at a tremendous cost. The struggle of single motherhood and financial hardship had stripped away the entitlement and superficiality that had characterized her personality for years. She worked hard at her job, cared devotedly for Cora, and had begun attending counseling sessions to understand how she'd made such destructive choices. She occasionally saw Jared around town. Cedar Falls was too small to avoid each other completely, but their interactions were brief and polite. The anger had faded, replaced by something closer to pity on his part and regret on hers. They'd both moved beyond the hatred and hurt to a place where they could coexist peacefully while living entirely separate lives. Trevor had asked to meet his half-sister, and after careful consideration, Jared had arranged supervised visits. The boy was curious about Cora, but clear that Angela's choices had consequences that affected their relationship permanently. He was polite but distant during visits, protective of his loyalty to his father while maintaining basic human decency toward his mother. As spring turned to summer, Jared reflected on the year that had changed everything. The betrayal had initially felt like the end of the world, but it had actually been the end of a lie that had been slowly poisoning his life for years. The truth had been devastating, but ultimately liberating, allowing him to build something authentic and lasting. Standing on his rebuilt deck one evening, watching Trevor practice baseball in the backyard, Jared felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Complete contentment with his life as it actually was, rather than as he'd imagined it to be. The foundation was solid now, built on truth, integrity, and the unbreakable bond between a father and son who'd survived the worst together and emerged stronger. Chapter 9. Justice Served. 2 years after the ultrasound that revealed the truth, Cedar Falls had fully absorbed the lessons of the Angela Atkinson scandal, and the town had moved on with the collective wisdom that comes from witnessing justice served comprehensively and fairly. The story had become something of a local legend, a cautionary tale about the consequences of betrayal and the rewards of integrity. Marcos Jennings remained in federal prison, with 5 years left on his sentence. Reports from his ex-wife Samantha indicated that he'd become a model prisoner, finally facing the reality of his actions and their consequences. His daughters were thriving under their mother's care, having moved across the country where they could build new lives free from their father's legacy of dishonesty. Angela had continued her slow journey toward redemption, though it remained a difficult path marked by the consequences of her choices. She'd been promoted to assistant manager at the grocery store, a modest achievement that represented genuine progress in rebuilding her life. Cora was a healthy, happy 2-year-old who brought moments of joy to Angela's otherwise challenging existence. The relationship between Angela and Trevor had evolved into something civil but distant. The boy, now 16 and increasingly mature, visited his mother occasionally, but made it clear that his primary loyalty remained with his father. He'd grown into a young man who embodied Jared's best qualities: integrity, work ethic, and loyalty, while avoiding the bitterness that might have consumed someone who'd experienced such family trauma at a younger age. She made her choices, Trevor had said to his father one evening as they discussed whether to attend Angela's graduation from a community college business program. I can respect that she's trying to do better without forgetting what she put us through. They attended the graduation ceremony, sitting in the back and leaving immediately afterward. Angela had looked across the auditorium and nodded in acknowledgement, understanding that their presence represented a form of closure rather than reconciliation. She was grateful for their witness to her small achievement, even knowing that the damage to their relationship could never be fully repaired. Jared had found love again, though he'd approached it with the careful deliberation that now characterized all his major decisions. Pearl Downing was a widow who'd moved to Cedar Falls to be closer to her adult children. She was kind, intelligent, and shared Jared's values of honesty and hard work. Their relationship had developed slowly over 18 months, with both understanding the importance of building something genuine rather than rushing into commitment. Trevor approved of Pearl, appreciating her respect for his relationship with his father and her understanding that she wasn't trying to replace his mother, but rather to add something positive to their lives. The three of them had formed a comfortable family unit that honored the past while building toward the future. Atkinson Construction had grown dramatically, expanding into 3 states and employing over 400 people. The company's reputation for integrity had become its greatest asset, with clients specifically seeking them out because of Jared's character. The scandal that could have destroyed him had instead become proof of his principles and judgment. Chuck Lake had become a full partner in the business, their friendship deepened by the trials they'd weathered together. Chuck's wife Sarah had developed a close relationship with Pearl, creating a social circle that supported both couples while respecting their individual needs and boundaries. Dr. Harrington, though retired, remained a respected figure in Cedar Falls, often cited as an example of professional integrity who'd chosen truth over comfort when faced with a difficult situation. His courage in revealing Angela's deception had prevented years of additional deception and allowed everyone involved to face reality and make better choices. Paul Hines, the private investigator who'd helped Jared gather evidence, had become something of a local celebrity, with other betrayed spouses seeking his services based on his thorough and professional work on the Atkinson case. He developed a reputation for discretion and competence that made him the go-to investigator for sensitive family matters throughout the region. On a warm Saturday evening in June, exactly 3 years after the ultrasound revelation, Jared stood on his deck. The same deck he'd rebuilt during the darkest period of his life, surrounded by the people who'd proven their loyalty and worth. Chuck and Sarah were there with their children. Pearl was helping Trevor prepare for his senior year of high school. Jeffrey Dunn, his attorney, had stopped by with his family for the barbecue that had become an annual celebration of survival and renewal. As Jared watched this gathering of genuine relationships built on truth and mutual respect, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed him had ultimately saved him from a life built on lies. The pain that had seemed unbearable had led to growth and wisdom he wouldn't have gained any other way. "Any regrets?" Pearl asked, joining him at the deck railing as the sun set over Cedar Falls. Jared considered the question seriously, as he did all questions about the past 3 years. About trusting too much initially? No. About how I handled the truth when I learned it? No. About the consequences that followed? No. He looked across the yard, where Trevor was showing Chuck's youngest son how to properly swing a baseball bat, the same patient instruction Jared had received from his own father decades ago. The cycle of positive influence continued, unbroken by the betrayal that had threatened to poison everything good in his life. "The only regret I have," Jared continued, "is that it took a crisis to show me the difference between the life I thought I wanted and the life I actually needed. But even that wasn't really a mistake. It was education." As the evening wound down and their friends departed, Jared felt the deep satisfaction that comes from surviving the worst and building something better from the wreckage. Angela and Marcos had paid the full price for their betrayal, not through revenge, but through the natural consequences of their choices and the justice that follows when truth replaces lies. The foundation